Well, folks, live ramblings number 10. You love to see it. I'll never stop rambling. And so, here we are for Fleet's Random Ramblings. Just a normal, bog standard, happy, old ramblings. Just nice, peaceful, calm. Oh, and it's just me. Which is the funniest thing about this. It's just me. Never mind. Never mind. What are you gonna do, eh? Hey, what can a bloke do? One person. Darth Sidious always showing up. Most dedicated ramblings viewer right there. And also dedicated viewer of the YouTube channel as well. Like, he's been watching along with all the streams and all the videos. Which I appreciate. But this has got to be the lowest turnout we've ever had. Fucking just... What the fuck? No, the channel, my channel, not Drac. We love Drac, but I was more referring to me. I'm allowed to do self-promotion on my own fucking show, I would think. Yeah. You may as well. You're the only person here. Darth Sidious. Wow. This is mildly depressing. Just... What the fuck is this? I've never known it like this before. One person. Is that it? "300 people have the Fleet's Random Ramblings role. 354. So you'd think there'd be more. Had Jutland not happened, it would have delayed the increase in armor of the battlecruiser. But that's pretty much all it would have done. It wouldn't have affected much of anything else. Although you would have seen all 4 admirals in service by about 1919, which would have been interesting. One person. How would that affect the Washington Naval Treaty? That's basically Britain's capital ship strength is. Britain can probably argue at that point for a slightly superior fleet tonnage to the US, or maybe Britain won't agree to the Washington Naval Treaty. I don't know. If it's the same, if it's the same as is historically, then Britain will have those 4 ships as their 16-inch ships. The Japanese will demand 3 16-inch ships, so they'll demand to complete one of their Washington Treaty era designs. The US will demand all 4 Colorados. And I think that's how it will go. Ah, there we go. I've actually got some people. I was beginning to wonder if people actually fucking showed up for Ramblings anymore. You don't have a guest anymore on Ramblings? I'm not fucking showing up. I don't want to have to go and get Drac every single fucking time. It's supposed to be my show. I shouldn't need Drac to prop it up. The problem is that all of the we've been asked all the questions already. There's nothing new for me to work my brain on because I've answered a lot of the questions I get asked now. I have to keep parroting the same answers I've given like for 3 years. It's like fucking what? Oh god, the mad woman's here.
Hello.
God damn it.
You look lonely.
I'm fine. I'm so far. Yeah, Sidious, you've asked all your questions. We've been dancing this dance for 2.5 years now. Like, I think people are running out of naval-related questions to ask me. I am happy that LEGO has done that. Finally, a decent-looking train set. How do German destroyers and German torpedo boats differ? So German torpedo boats are smaller, all armed. Usually they're smaller craft, usually carrying no more than 3 guns of a smaller caliber than the ones destroyers are used to carrying, but are, as a rule, ocean-going, and in every other navy would just be classed as destroyers of a smaller type. That's the only real difference. In World War I, it was a genuine separation between the more coastal and Baltic vessels of torpedo boat designation that would work in the Baltic and close to German coastal waters in World War I, and therefore could be smaller and cheaper, and the actual destroyers that would work with the high seas fleet. By the Second World War, it was kind of a get-around, with German torpedo boats just basically being small destroyers, although they were some of the best German destroyers built during the Second World War, and prior to it.
Some of the German destroyers were a mistake.
Yeah, but let's not get into that.
You don't put 6-inch guns in a destroyer.
Yeah, you do if you build it right.
You better spar like cruiser.
No, you better off building a large destroyer. Or something in between, like a destroyer leader.
Yeah. But it's hard to practically 6-inch gun destroyer. Even a destroyer leader.
Rune asks, Scenario 1, World War II, halved. Either one of 2 scenarios. Germany fights alone in World War II, Japan either simply giving up on China for some reason or being unable to invade China, or Japan fights the Pacific alone with Germany straight up not going Nazi or being contained in the West. Europe in some sort of World War I-esque conflict. Would casualties be halved with or more with the scale of the conflict being drastically reduced? Or would it not make a big difference as more nations would be free to attack the one nation that is fighting the Allies? Impossible to know. There are so many variables in that. You've already vastly oversimplified the concept of war. There is no way to know what the casualty figures would be. Just because you make a conflict smaller or shorten a front doesn't mean that casualties scale with that. It's a lesson that military commanders and governments have had to learn over and over and over again. The sheer size of a conflict does not relate in any way to the casualties that conflict will induce. Why did the Courageous class have so little armour? Wouldn't it maybe be better to use 13.5-inch guns and increase some of the armour? Well, no, the whole point is they were built as large light cruisers, as a deliberate get-out-of-jail-free card. Increasing the armour would give the game away. Well, no, because
What?
the 15-inch guns didn't appear on the balance sheets. The armor did.
Weren't they using already existing 50 guns?
They were. So no requisition orders had to be put out for them. They were part of a stock that were built for some of the other Avengers, but never used. But the armor plate would show up on requisition forms, and so Fisher had to make sure that it was plate that the government wouldn't throw a hissy fit at.
And if I'm remembering correctly, there was an armor plate shortage in World War One. So
No, World War Two. There was no armor plate shortage in
Okay.
World War One.
I remember reading about the other admirals having armor production delays, but
Well, no,
that might be just for battleship armor.
Well, no, that's because the admirals were being redesigned and constantly tweaked and fiddled with, which means that the steel mills had to keep recalibrating and recalibrating, accepting different orders, building different plate, rather than the constant steady tempo of increasing armor thickness they've been used to.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a shortage; it was just a one-off incident.
Because with the admirals, it would have been almost a French pre-dreadnought case of they're all vastly different.
Well, no, it would have been Hood and then a class of 3.
Mm. Oh god, that plan for Detroit.
I mean, in Asia for large motor car usage, nothing wrong with it. But of course, as the years would go on, it would cause problems. But in an age before vast motor car usage, do you have an idea of how the High Seas Fleet would play into Fisher's Baltic plan? Did anticipate that the High Seas Fleet wouldn't be an issue? No, because we've no idea what the Baltic plan actually is. No detailed documents regarding the Baltic plan have ever been discovered or found. So we've no idea what the Cindy, that's kind of outside my area of expertise. I need someone who actually understands modern missile combat and the navies of the Cold War. There's a difference between doing the Red Fleet timeline, which is just he who Soviet fleet but with some carriers and big gun ships, and building a modern fleet from the 60s onwards, when I have no knowledge of Chinese weapons development or ship classification. Which class or ship saw the greatest change in their designs at the end of their service life from their original as-built design? That's a wide. It'd have to be a carrier conversion. Probably one of the liner carrier conversions, because that's the greatest change from a civilian vessel, an ocean liner, to a fucking carrier. That's literally a greater change than a battleship to a carrier, or a cruiser to a carrier, or hell, even a merchant vessel to a carrier, because at least merchants could have some provisions to be armed in some way. And while liners could be, by the 30s, that role had really, because the experience of liners in the First World War had made everyone go, no, expensive to run, fuel hogs, maintenance hogs, no, we're not going to do that anymore.
I feel the need to point out that going from the old system of using an old warship as a naval base was a big change.
I mean, yeah, but no, that's still a naval vessel, and it's still serving the Navy in some form. Whereas going from a liner to a fucking aircraft carrier, and that's a jump.
Yeah, it's going from a warship to a static installation.
Yeah, it's not really that much of a change. Warships are static all the time.
Yeah, it's the thing about being permanently static.
Yeah, no, Fox. No, your argument is invalid. No. Also, Hood, nice to see you. Also, nice new profile pic. I approve. 10 out of 10. Fort Drum. Yeah. An interesting take on coastal defence, but not one of the most perfect ones ever created. It has to be said. Interesting.
If I remember correctly, there was a Fort Drum style design proposed for Malta, wasn't there?
Yes, but the Royal Navy quite rightly decided that it was stupid.
Yeah, because it was to go in between, just sit within the island chain.
And also, more to the point, why bother? Like, the Royal Navy
Yeah.
realised what the US didn't. That the age of fixed fortifications was dying. In terms of, relying on a fort to deter an invading force.
Yeah, they still had realized you kind of need to integrate a fort into an overall bigger strategy now in that time.
Why was Indefatigable so badly protected? Because the government wanted to keep the cost of ships down, and so mandated that the design change as little as possible from the Invincibles.
And she didn't need more armor to do a job.
No, Hood, that they did. They really did.
I'm not Hood.
Oh, sorry, Fox, they did. The Indefatigables were a massive misstep and were a failure.
Yeah. In hindsight, yes.
No, at
But
the time.
the-
No, not in hindsight, at the time.
Well, I will forgive because the Invincibles worked for what they were. So why not just build more of them?
The Indefatigables had less armor than the Invincibles. And more importantly, by that point, by the time the Indefatigables are being designed, the British know the Germans are building Von der Tann. And Fisher's like, we need to build ships with our new 13.5-inch gun armoured against 12-inch guns, because they're going to have to fight other battle cruisers now. And he said this, and one of the proposals for Indefatigable was a ship with 8 13.5-inch guns armoured against 12-inch shellfire. And the government said no. Which directly led to the loss of ships, the avoidable loss of ships at Jutland.
Because, wasn't it? Which one of the Indefatigables blew up?
Indefatigable herself.
The Indefatigable, because you can't blame Invincible's explosion on Invincible.
Well, yeah, because that's the Invincibles again. Like the Invincibles are just, they're being thrown into a fight they weren't designed for.
Rune, if the Royal Navy gets their hand on that, they cry. Because there's not much use for it.
That's just terrible in every metric of the word. Well, yeah, Lexington in hindsight is just beautiful. Because she's got so much spare displacement you can play with. And by that I mean, she'll be capable of 33 knots when she comes out of the yard into service. Refit in 1929. Full boiler replacement. Full boiler and turbine replacement. Drop speed by 2 knots to 21 knots. And since you're replacing with more modern machinery, do you have any idea how much weight that's going to save? You'll be able to take the Lexingtons from a 33-knot vessel that's incapable of protecting against its own guns to a ship armed with 8 16-inch guns capable of 31 knots, armoured against its own guns at normal battle ranges. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous how cranked the Lexingtons could become by the Second World War.
They would need a lot of money to do that.
And so what? The US isn't going to spare that money for, their only fast capital ship.
Well,
Well, of course
not until the war. Not until 1939, at least.
No, they're going to do it in the mid-20s because they will have learned.
They're not, though.
They are. They're going to do it in the turn from the 20s to 30s because
isolationism's kicked in at that point, and they're not funding the navy.
And so, Fox, I think you're relying too much on popular history and not actual history. That's not how the USN was thinking.
Yeah,
because
but the USN's not the one in control of the Treasury.
yes,
American equivalent.
Yeah, but the American Navy has the money to do a refit like this. And we know that one of the US's big wishes, and one of the things they were pissed off at through the fucking fleet problems, was the lack of a fast capital ship. And if they've got one, and they've got a chance to work out some of the problems that they've found in her design, they're going to do it. They will, because if they've got one Lexington, and that's their only ship, if they've got this peaceful period in 1929 where they have, bear in mind, before the crash, they've got a lot of money, and if they put the money down and then send her in, then that's paid for and she's going. It's hard to overstate how important this Lexington would be to the USN as an asset. Well, no, they can't new build Dragon. They can't new build. The battleship building holiday is still in force. Basically, as soon as it becomes clear they're not getting any new battleships in 1929... Sorry, not 1929, First London. As soon as it becomes clear at First London that the battleship building holiday is continuing, Lexington is going in for a refit. No, Lexington as built isn't. Lexington as rebuilt, that's a different story entirely. Because you've got so much displacement to play with in Lexington if you fit it with 1930s era machinery. Dial back the speed by 2 knots from 33 to 31. And with the removing of machinery and the replacing of the remaining machinery with more compact, more weight efficient machinery, you've got a massive amount of weight that you've gained. Huge! Like, it's hard to overstate the amount of weight that this would actually save the design. Easily enough to make her at least immune to her own guns at normal battle ranges. And with some room left over and displacement left over for a dual-purpose secondary battery of 5-inch 38s. Well, yes,
Yeah, at that point they're building a new ship.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course they are. That's true. But here's the thing. They can't build new ships. Yeah, exactly. Yes, we are Dragon. Yeah, Dragon, we are, you're right. But this is the thing. The building holiday is still in force. The building holiday will still be in force for 4 additional years. Lexington needs that rebuild now. And if they can't build new ships, then this is the next best thing. On that, because the standards are still there. Like, the standards will still get the refits they get, because the standards didn't get any full rebuilds until the late 30s.
For good reason.
What's one fast BB going to really do? Escort the carriers. That's one of the things that the US was so pissed off they didn't have, was a fast carrier escort.
Hello, I'm up here now.
How much clearer do I have to make this?
I will reiterate once again the main reason that Pearl Harbor was able to happen, and I will also point to the only half-decent article that the National Interest ever wrote was, what if all the standards at Pearl Harbor were replaced with battle cruisers? Well, first things first, Pearl Harbor doesn't happen, because the main reason that Pearl Harbor happens is because the Japanese knew that the Americans' capital ship fleet was composed of very slow battleships that could not keep up with the carrier force. Not in exercise and not in engagement speeds. So, replacing them with battle cruisers, you have a much faster battle line that's able to keep pace with your carriers, which means it's able to be out with the carriers. And so the only thing the Japanese are going to be attacking at the time is the port facilities, which, if you look back, they barely touched. They were there exclusively to kill the battleships because they didn't want them to sail out and oppose them in the Philippines, in other parts of East Asia.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Dragon, this is
the
the thing.
reason that having a fast capital ship for the USN is so big is because we finally have a major surface combatant, a battle cruiser with, at the time, 16-inch guns, can keep up with our carriers because it is as fast as they are. If not faster, because it's probably going to be slightly lighter in terms of mass overall. So it's going to be able to keep pace with them.
Yeah, Dragon, it's not
When it
about-
comes to rebuilding them, they won't care that they are sacrificing the standards, because as far as they're concerned, the standards aren't going to be able to keep pace with the carriers.
like the
So
standards.
designing
the standards
Lexington,
the standards will still get their historical rebuilds. You know, the basic fire control fits.
they'll get their
AA
basic fire
fits.
controls, they'll get slightly better AA, they'll get all sorts of
The
other crew
Colorados will
considerations.
still go in for their full rebuilds because they are the other 16-inch ships of the USN, so they're valuable. for a
They're
different
part of
reason.
they're part of the Big Seven. They are a very big status symbol for the nations that had the Big Seven. Because at the time they were the only.
In this timeline, it'd be the Big Eight because Lexington is also.
Because
running
Lexington
around.
exists, yes.
Although
I
will
believe
point
the
out,
name that was thrown around, it was Constellation
Yeah.
for that, so it'll be Connie.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it'll be Lexington because the most advanced of the Lexingtons will be what's finished as a battle cruiser, and Saratoga and Connie will be the carriers.
Okay. Either way, when it comes down to it, the Lexington battlecruiser is likely going to get the lion's share of rebuild attention. So it'll get a lot of the more advanced systems. It'll probably be the first capital ship in terms of give this thing this stuff. It's going to be the first that gets the twin.
She'll be the
twin
first to get
5-inch
twin
38s.
Although, actually, if she's being refitted in the early 30s, she might not get twins. She'll actually be She'll be in this weird middle ground where she'll have singles.
She'll just get a lot of them.
Yeah, she'll just get a lot of single 5-inch. The thing is, no, Dragon, you're right when you've said that one ship won't do much. Like, it's not going to massively change the outcome of the Second World War. But as far as the USN's concerned, this is their golden toy. This is their big crown jewel. It's basically the same way Hood is for Britain, but unlike Britain, the US don't have to run her ragged around the world doing show the flag nonsense.
Dragon. The reason that she has an external torpedo belt is because a lot of the standards, which were period contemporary ships, they all got external ones because they couldn't physically put it inside the ship because it was so full of guns and other systems that were needed. So they all got external ones that increased their beam. That's why Constellation in WoWs has that.
Yeah, but Constellation's also not a Lexington. So
I
far as
mean,
I'm
she
aware.
is. She is.
Is she?
She's the World Warships. What if they rebuilt a Lexington in the 30s or something?
Yeah, but yeah, in that case, then
Yellow.
she's about right.
So she got exactly the same kind of fit package that the mid-war standards got when they were rebuilt.
It's probably worth pointing out that she would have that while that is a good World of Warships ing of it, that's not how she would have looked, because she in our
She does have a weird mix of things because she's got the forward like the Sodak armored conning tower just above
Yeah.
B turret, but then
Yeah.
she's got the Iowa style end of war / Cold War enclosed bridge,
like it's hard.
which I assume is the Admiral's bridge, but
Yeah, it's hard.
it's
to
WoW,
actually,
so
it's hard to actually visualize what Lexington will look like coming out of this refit in, say, 34, 35. But I can tell you one thing, she's going to look very similar to that at the outbreak of, and for most of, the Second World War. Because she will be until the NoCal, Sodaks, and Iowas come in. In fact, probably till the Iowas come in, a very vital asset for the USN. She'll gain 40mm and 20mm, and radar here and there, but she's going to remain in this weird... She's going to be seen as a halfway house between the less rebuilt standards and the modern fast capital ships of the USN. So she'll be looking slightly weird with her single 5-inch 38 mounts along her side, and she's going to be in this weird place as like a halfway house. That's bang on actually. That's probably the bottom one I prefer. I prefer the bottom one. That looks more along the lines of what I was talking about. Yeah, the bottom one's probably her after she comes out of the refit in 1934. The top one is her probably...
That's like a mid-war rebuild.
Yeah.
It's got all the mid-war technologies on it.
Yeah, but the bottom one is pretty much, bang on. Yeah, she's still got the mid-30s era float planes.
I have a feeling, though,
Some
that they would
casemates.
probably... I think they would remove either all of the casemates or enclose them and use them as positions to put single 5-inch 38s.
Yeah. Ooh, actually, no, even better. Hood, down here. This one, yeah. That's pretty much... I like
don't
that.
think that they would trunk the funnel like that.
No,
I don't think they would do that.
They wouldn't Lexington it, no. No. Well, no, she won't be at Pearl. She'll be with one of the carriers. She'll be with the carrier deemed most at risk of attack. So the one that's gone furthest into...
At the time of Pearl Harbor, the carrier force was out on exercises.
Yeah, I know, but she'll be with the carrier deemed most important.
Wouldn't she be in
Which
the
is
North Atlantic,
likely-
though?
No,
either...
she'll be with Big E.
No.
She'll be with E, because E was actually not on exercise, she was on a mission to Wake Island. So Lexington will be with Big E.
Because I was just thinking, wouldn't she be in the East Coast because of the German raiders?
No.
Like, the US
No.
is
Absolutely
sort of
not.
shifting looking towards the east before they get attacked.
Absolutely not.
So the main thing is that Germany is not exactly looking to pick too many fights with America. So the only thing they're really doing is sending submarines and using them to target specifically Commonwealth flagged vessels. It's not until the real, America is in all but name on the side of the Allies, start targeting Allied shipping, and then like a few months later we're going to declare war because Japan declares war, and great powers are the ones that declare war. They don't get declared on.
Fucking
He-hoo.
absolute, lemon moment right there.
So the Americans are not assigning battleships and battle cruisers to Atlantic patrols. That's where we see, funnily enough, the hilarious misuse of carriers by the Admiralty. Deploying full fleet carriers to hunt for submarines was a stupid idea. Lighter carriers like Unicorn would have been better, but Unicorn was not strictly speaking a light carrier. She was a supply and maintenance carrier. So again, would not have been the best use of Unicorn either. However, losing a pair of carriers and almost losing Ark Royal to submarine patrols was dumb. And the Americans are going to look at that and think, let's not do that. Let's also not deploy battleships that are slower. And even if it's a battle cruiser that goes, let's say 31 knots,
It's also
we're still
our
putting
only
those in the
fast...
Pacific to fight.
Yeah, it's
the
also
Japanese
our only
and
fast
secure
fucking
our
capital
carriers.
ship, and you want to send it into an active war zone with people we're not at war
Just-
with.
Yeah, have it on the East Coast because when America does get in the war, because America was, if I remember correctly, before the outbreak, was escorting Allied convoys in American waters.
And that's a
Yes.
job for frigates.
Attacking.
That's still not a job for battle cruisers. That's also
Yeah,
still not a job
just
for
let
the
me
escort ships.
finish. But it's more of the Americans are going to be looking at the German raiders breaking out into the Atlantic again, like Tirpitz.
And they're going to be like, that's a British
And
problem.
this is probably the only ship that can actually take on. Tirpitz at that point.
That's still something that they would look to the British to solve. There
And
were
also
a handful of times where
And also, if the Americans need to deal with that, they have these wonderful ships called Texas and New York in the Atlantic.
they have
Yeah,
other
you want
battleships.
Texas and New York to go against Tirpitz?
No,
I know Tempest isn't the best ship, but
I want
it's
Texas
not
and New
that
York.
bad.
I want Texas and
It's
New York to do
also
what they did
it's also
historically.
worth pointing out that they did assign a handful of I believe it was the North Dakotas.
Yeah.
No, the NoCals and the Sodax all worked up on operations in Europe before transiting to the
Yes.
Pacific. But here's the thing: they worked up before transiting. They didn't stay there for long.
Yeah, so would you see the lights on East Coast and see the North Cals working up in the Pacific Coast? Because you want the modern capital ships to go fight the modern navy, which is which what they're thinking the Japanese is. IJN is.
Yes, but they're still having to work them up, and working them up in an area where it's seen as relatively easy to work a ship up without losing it through hilarious overwhelming air power from carrier fleets in the middle of fucking nowhere, where they can be protected by allied bases or allied aircraft in friendly bases, is much better for them. So it's more likely that we're going to see the Lexington is going to be worked quite hard and going to have to go in for refits pretty regularly, whilst other capital ships like the Sodax and NoCals come into the fleet in the Pacific. But she's still only going to go to, say, San Diego or Pearl for that. She's not going to be transiting the Suez, and she might be slightly too long, depending on pre-war considerations for her refits, because they were long. And the only consideration for the battle cruisers and carriers were they had to be able to transit the canal. So it may be a case that while she's being refitted, she'll get other stuff bolted on that makes her too thick. So it's more likely that she's going to be fitted in West Coast yards to remove that possibility. She is very unlikely to be put into the Atlantic for any reason. She's likely going to spend either the entire war or 99% of it in the Pacific, if not in the East Coast in general, because that's where she's needed. Again, until the Sodax and NoCals come into the fleet, she's the only fast capital ship that can keep pace with the carriers. That is her primary job. As far as the American Navy is concerned, she's not going to be out fighting other capital ships despite her speed and guns, because the idea that the Americans had an idea of the decisive battle doctrine, because that's the only way that Japan could win against America. They are going to make them either fuck up in that idea, or they're going to completely avoid it.
I'm sorry, I was away for a second. What did I miss?
Not much.
Currently, an argument about whether you should call North Carolina North Cal, or if it's North California.
No, it's NoCal. It's NoCal. Like, I call them NoCals and Sodax.
That was also what they were historically called by their crews.
What was the thought process on USS Wasp, and why wasn't she built like the normal 3 Yorktowns? They didn't have the spare tonnage left.
Yeah, USS Wasp was explicitly to fill up the American tonnage on the treaty. She was essentially a scaled down Yorktown to fit the treaty tonnage.
Yeah. Question: how many USS Macons would it take to detect the Pearl Harbor attack fleet early enough? Basically, if you've got USS Macon and Akron still around by the start of the Pacific War, they will be out. USS Macon and Akron will be out in 1941. Like, they will be patrolling, and they'll have their aircraft out, and they'll basically be acting as a picket across the west of Hawaii. Because there were towers. Because there were towers and hangars for Macon and Akron at Hawaii. Because, newsflash, they were meant to be the Pacific Fleet's aerial scouts. So there were hangars and towers for them at Pearl Harbor, which were demolished by 1941 in our timeline, but if they're still around, will still be there. And all it takes is Acheron and Macron to be operating west of Hawaii in a picket role, and it's highly likely that they'd find something. It's also worth pointing out that they would probably be equipped with some form of radar. So, just the pair of them would be enough, given a little bit of luck. I know, Frangible Cover, I get what you're saying, but when I say west of Hawaii, I mean west. I'm talking west.
It should also be worth pointing out that the Americans detected the Japanese as they came in. A small picket, I guess, detected a midget submarine and alerted USS Ward, which then sank it, which was the first shot fired.
Yep.
At which point they then detected the gigantic wave of aircraft coming in. However, if I recall correctly, a number of radar techs at the time believed it to be a gigantic flock of birds, since Hawaii is known to host them, and until they saw the planes flying past, and then they alerted the defensive forces, which was a bit too late. But Pearl Harbor is kind of full of those instances.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, Pearl Harbor is as much down to... Like, Pearl Harbor is a cumulative... Like a lot of things in the Second World War, Pearl Harbor is a cumulative string of events that strung together. Just like the Channel Dash, just like the early phases of Operation Barbarossa, just like the Battle of France, just like the Battle of Britain. A lot of the Second World War, while yes, there's planning and strategy involved, a lot of things have to go right for a lot of people, for a lot of shit to go well. And the nations that do best are usually those that...
Oh no, look at all those Spruance destroyers being attacked by Zeros.
I hate it. I know, we all hate it. We all hate it. We don't talk about Pearl Harbor. We don't talk about Pearl Harbor. Ooh, Sea Dodders, what have you made? Do tell me, what have you made? What is that? Is that Hood or Vanguard?
It's not the right superstructure to be Vanguard.
Tiger?
It's not the right size to be length.
As in the battlecruiser Tiger?
Tiger's probably not too bad of a candidate for conversion.
She's gone by that point.
Exactly. But as far as full shape goes,
Yeah.
did Sea Dodders ever make the Cold War HMS Renown model?
If everything goes wrong for the IJN in Pearl, as in, they somehow failed to sink any US battleships, how hard are they fucked, and how will the Japanese Navy react? At first, they're going to panic. Then, no. First things first, they're going to be like, fuck, we failed. Secondly, they're going to recycle their air wings on their carriers relatively rapidly. Thirdly, the US battle fleet's going to sail out looking for a fight. And fourthly, they're going to get jumped on by the Kidabutai again at sea and annihilated. It's just like the whole what if the US fleet is ready for the Japanese and sails out to fight the Kidabutai at Pearl. It just ends with a lot of US ships unsalvageable on the bottom of the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, the main thing about why Pearl Harbor was both a failure and a success for the Japanese was because they did sink a bunch of ships, or they heavily damaged a bunch of ships.
Failed successfully?
Unfortunately, not only were those ships in really shallow water and in a friendly port that had the facilities to fix and repair them, but they harmed basically none of the facilities at the harbour.
And they couldn't
meaning
have,
that
and they couldn't
they were
have,
next to immediately able to start fixing the ones that were salvageable readily. It took them a few months to get some of the ships, like the one that had like 3 sailors trapped in a room for a month and a half.
Tennessee.
Yes, I think it was Tennessee. It took them a while to get some of the capital ships back into service, but they were able to get almost all of them back out and ready to go. The obvious exclusion being the Arizona, and I think one other that just took a lot longer because it was not very high up on the priority list. Had the port facilities been severely damaged instead of the ships, it would have been a lot worse for the Americans, because now they have no ready base that size to service that many ships without major rebuilding that takes a time and need to have materials sent over that can be easily intercepted. If the US battle fleet is able to sail out immediately and start moving against the projected position of the Japanese fleet, then yeah, that's a bit of an issue, because not only is there a bunch of ships able to go and fight the Kido Butai and the combined fleet's surface elements, but suddenly you have the decisive battle on Hawaii's doorstep in much deeper waters than the harbour. And yeah, America is going to take losses, because they aren't quite in the state that they are in the mid to late war, because America did take some very difficult lessons through some very humbling instances to get to where it was at the end of the war. Suddenly, America is now down, let's say, half their capital ships, because they all sailed out without air cover, or sufficient air cover, because it must be pointed out that whilst none of the harbour facilities were seriously damaged in the attack, a lot of the airfields were, which included a lot of their aircraft and fuel facilities. I believe the most destroyed static elements of the American military forces there were their fuel tanks, which suddenly are a lot emptier or are destroyed. So it's very, very realistic that they won't be able to amass an air cover sufficient enough to cover the fleet as it exits and goes to fight them, but also is not going to have the ability to fight effectively against the Kido Butai, which are now going to be immediately switching up to, we need to have a combat air patrol or protection elements in the air, but also having dive bombers and torpedo bombers, because suddenly a gigantic fleet of American battleships is not really going to have the room to maneuver the way that they want to in open water, because they're having to sail at the Japanese, so they can only go in one direction realistically to fight. Otherwise, they have to turn back and still run the risk of being sunk on the way back.
Yeah, and plus they'll be missing crew. They'll be missing crew, possibly short on ammunition and fuel, possibly damaged.
They also, fun fact, will not have the carriers there to protect them, because again, they're still,
they're still
quite a distance away, either doing other things or on exercises.
And also, yeah,
they're going to have to run back, and they would need refueling and repairing or rearmament, depending on what they've been doing, which they can't do now because Pearl Harbor's port facilities have been mostly fucked. So they're going to have to go straight into battle, which they're not really going to want to do.
Yeah, the only one that can is USS Enterprise, who is on her way back from Wake, and one air group against the Kido Butai is she's just not going to take that fight.
I'm not going to pull Din Djarin and be like, I like those odds. I don't like those odds.
A Kido Butai that's out of fuel.
The Kido Butai is not out of fuel.
No,
they're going to have to spend a little bit refueling their aircraft and putting them back in the sky, but they're not going to be out of fuel.
No, but also that's aviation fuel, that's avgas, not bunker fuel.
Wasn't the Japanese fleet, when doing Pearl Harbor, right on the edge of their physical range that the ships had?
They are, but they're currently just sat there doing flight ops at the lowest speed they can manage to do flight ops.
The combined fleet can just turn around because they have still left a number of supply ships at particular points, which is how they got out there, because their whole thing was, all right, we go to point A, and if we're not detected, we continue to point B. At each point, there is a number of supply ships ready to provide fuel for those that need it, and wait there to refuel them on the way back. They're just going to start moving to point B through A, 3, 2, 1, as they continue on their way back, continually launching aircraft back to go and start whittling down the American battle fleet, which entirely plays into their idea of decisive battle. The entire plan for it was the Americans move out from Pearl Harbor and start moving towards our newly conquered territories in the Philippines, or moving towards our islands in the outer island chain, at which point the Kido Butai moves out, starts whittling them down with airstrikes, dive bombings, torpedo bombings, so that by the time they get to the decisive battle site, there's only 2/3 or 1/3 of their current strength, so that the battleships can move in and mop up. They are going to absolutely take that opportunity to start whittling them down as they pursue them, at which point there's not much that Pearl can do to fix and refuel them, because the port facility have been fucked. If we're going with that particular idea. So yeah, this is absolutely a fight that the Japanese can win, because they've been training to do this for the past 3 fucking years. At least. Probably longer, considering the idea of the Kido Butai and the combined fleet has been around since the 20s.
It's just the implementation had to wait till they had enough carriers to do it.
Yeah.
Like Frangible, that's a point. You do make a point about, emergency refueling of their destroyers. But if push comes to shove, they will shut down the destroyers' turbines and take them under tow behind, I don't know, Congo and Hiei.
It's depending on the situation, it's more like they're just going to have the crew dismount and leave. Because
scuttle the ship. Because if you've succeeded in killing, I don't know, let's be generous and say outright sunk 5 US standards in open water, and let's say I'll be generous and throw in a badly battered Enterprise who tried to interfere.
Oh no, Enterprise is not going to interfere. Enterprise is going to hear about what's going on and realizing that there is nothing I can do. I can only either go back to Pearl and help out there, or sail back to America and get word there faster. She is not going to interfere. She's going to give it a wide berth and not get involved. Because losing Enterprise and losing her pilots and her air wing is not worth attempting to savage or blunt the Kido Butai's attack.
If I'm not being generous, Frangible, they get 2 to 3 standards. They're guaranteed to get at least 1 to 2. They're guaranteed to get 1 to 2 in open water. 3 is just average, and being generous is 5 to 6.
There's a lot of fighting the standards.
What?
We're also talking early carrier ops, aren't we?
We're talking the Kido Butai.
Yeah, the Kido Butai at the time had managed to perfect its flight ops in daytime. They were still working on nighttime fighting, but they were getting along rather well. The whole thing about this is that, alright, they've not sunk any ships, they've only damaged a handful, but they fucked over the port facilities completely. They're flying back, they land, they start refueling and rearming.
The standards
and then the combined fleet's outer picket line detects or at least their air pickets will spot or detect the sortying US fleet, because you fucked up our home. We're going to go and smash your teeth in. They come out, move into formation, and then start moving towards the projected position of the combined fleet. The Kido Butai is then immediately ordered, right, you've refueled, you've rearmed, get back in the air. I don't care if the pilots are fatigued, but we need you up there now.
Oh no, Hood. This is literally perfect. In the time it will take, the standards to raise steam and leave, and everything else to raise steam and leave the harbour, that'll be a good half a day. That's enough time for the crews, for the aircraft to rest, rearm, maintain, breakfast / lunch, and then be ready to go again with the entire.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I forget how long the early carrier ops take. I was purely thinking in, yes, let's be stupid and give these carriers and aircraft the ability of modern supercarriers and jet
Well,
jet
no,
aircraft.
Hood.
That's my bad.
No, Hood. You were actually correct. We're talking half a day. Half a day for the Standards to get out of Pearl Harbor. That's more than enough time to turn the Kido aircraft and cruise round.
Yeah, but I was thinking in the same day.
Yeah, exactly. In the same day. Yeah. They can do that.
No, the same day as the attack. It's not going to be the same day. It's going to be the day after that they
it's
meet.
going to be the same day. It's not
Yeah,
hard.
aren't most of the Standards still coal-fired?
No, none of the
No.
Standards.
No, never mind.
None of
Yes,
them.
you understand.
None of them were built as coal-fired.
That's what never mind, don't mind me. I thought Texas was coal-fired. Never mind.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They'll the attack will go in at 8. It'll do no damage. No, Frangible. They're not going into Pearl. They're not. This isn't the third strike on Pearl.
This is the third strike, but it's against a fleet in open water.
In the middle of the day, say at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, about 10, 20 miles off Pearl.
Yeah, that's not half a day, Flynn. That's 6 hours ish.
Okay, half of the daylight then.
It's going to be like 7 o'clock in the evening that the Standards are able to move into position.
No, it's not.
At that point, that's a night strike.
It's not.
And
It's not going to take that long. Like it takes half a day to raise steam from cold. As in half.
Yeah, from 8 in the morning, that's still 12 hours, which is 8 at night.
No, Sidonis isn't talking like that. He's talking like I'm talking, which is about 6 hours.
That's not half a day. If you
But the thing is, also bear in mind that the battleships aren't raising steam from cold. Because battleships never are.
even then, they've got to organise.
Yeah, it's
They've got
going
to
to
take infantry.
a while.
Like-
They're not going to take on troops. They're not going to do that.
I
Yeah.
still maintain.
So, of case, they're not going to go out in their underwear. They're going to actually get ready to fight. They're going to get the crews they need. Because quite frankly, I don't think the US of the 30s and 40s is stupid enough to send a battleship with half crew out. Because they kind of need the crews. They have flame crews for the reason.
Most of the Standards crews were still on the ships. It was only a handful of them that had the majority of their ships dismounted for shore leave.
And I would like to point out that while Sidonis is correct about all of that, we're also talking about that's normal procedure, not cutting any corners. You better believe they're doing what the US did in the dark days of 41, 42. All of the corners will be cut. All of the safety procedures will be overwritten. The Standards are going out to have a crack at the fucking Japanese, and you're coming whether you like it or not, and we're leaving in 8 hours, and I'm not taking no for an answer.
Well, no, they wouldn't know, because cutting corners on safety procedures is how you get we're down a standard because something's gone wrong.
Well, no, Foxo. No corner you could cut would get you down a standard.
You can delay them, and if they're trying to go as quickly as possible, you follow procedure.
No, Foxo. The USN proved time and again in the Second World War they were willing to break procedure to turn ships round faster.
I will point out there is a difference between breaking procedure and being stupid. If you're stupid with your battleship, you're going to break it. They are not going to do that. They are going to start working them up as fast as they can, as safely as they can, given how fiddly big steam engines can be. However, they're not going to do things stupid like not do certain things to get them ready to go. Then they're not going to do that. That's not how you take care of your ship, even if you're at war.
No, Fungible. They don't need to wait for them to get out of the cover of land-based air, because the land-based air will still have been fucked by the attack
A,
of Pearl
a,
Harbor.
a lot of the airfield's fueling systems and aircraft themselves, frangible at Pearl Harbor historically, were also destroyed.
And what is there? Not all. There are aircraft left, but what is left are odds that the Zeros of the Kido-Butai would be happy to take on.
Particularly since in the moment, the Kido-Butai is going to be able to outnumber them. Yeah. It's a lot of aircraft.
Which basically hands the Kido-Butai free reign to do what they like. And
A lot of the pilots as well and the handling crews, like the maintenance crews, were also very badly wounded during the attacks.
I mean, RPG does make a good point. This is all bear in mind. All of these things we've been doing, we've been operating under the assumption that the USN would go out. There's no guarantee they will.
Well, so the initial thing for this was, okay, so the Japanese doesn't sink any ships.
Yeah, they failed.
They only damage port facilities instead of the ships.
Yeah.
Well, what does the US fleet do? We've been operating under the assumption that the US fleet raises steam and goes out to try and fight the combined fleet because you just fucked up our home base. We want to have you.
Yeah, the only reason that they wouldn't is if their ships were damaged, but the whole point of this is that they're not.
Yeah.
But what I'm thinking is, like, it's going to be chaos if the port facility's been hit that bad. Like, there's a good chance that if they're not hitting the ships, they've hit someone high up that's important. And there's just going to be a lot of organising to do to get the fleet ready to sail. That's not just...
It was a Sunday.
That is a point.
It was a Sunday. The Japanese knew that most servicemen who were able to leave base would be off base because it was a weekend. It was a Sunday. They were either going to be in church, which is why they struck at the time that they did, because a lot of the ships were either going to be holding services, a lot of the port personnel would be either off base or in their chapels doing church services. And I'm pretty sure, and this was the reason that it was in the movie, the senior staff officers at Pearl Harbor were either off base at home or doing things like getting their hair cut or their teeth looked at or just off base. It's very unlikely that unless they go out of their way to attack Hawaii's towns outside of Pearl, which is not their target, they are not going to be doing that.
They do not have to
sink the ships.
Despite the Japanese penchant for violence, they don't have the ordnance to do it.
Yeah, they do not have the time, and they do not have the idea in the time to go after particular officers because they don't know where they are. They know that they're not on base. That's about it. So they're not going to deal with that. It's very unlikely that, head of the American battle fleet is going to be just on a ship and get greased by the Kido-Butai, especially if they don't sink or damage any of the ships because they only hit port facilities, which is even less likely. I believe that one of the intended targets for the Kido-Butai in the attack was the staff headquarters, but they didn't damage it severely enough.
Yeah, it's damage to staff
even
headquarters.
Then, it's not going to be like that.
Yeah,
That's
what
not
I
how
would
it
like to
works.
point out is that
the US will just need time to organise, so they're not just going to raise steam.
Yeah, well, no, they are. They're going to start raising steam, but they may not leave. They're going to keep... Fox, you better believe they're going to raise steam as soon as the attack starts, which is what happened historically. As soon as they realised they were under attack, every single battleship and every ship in the harbour began to raise steam.
Yeah.
And that will continue in this timeline. But here's the thing. RBG's made a point. The American fleet has to sail out of Pearl Harbor as a unit. Now, that's not just... And here's the reason. Pearl Harbor is fucked. The port facilities are fucked. They're going to have to bring in repair crews and everything else because the base is no longer fit to support vessels. And at that
Yeah,
point,
what our beach just said.
but what I'd say is if they're gonna raise steam and leave, they're gonna raise steam and leave combat capable. Now, whether or not they go after the Japanese fleet or not remains to be seen. Personally, the more we've talked about this, the more I'm realizing it's likely they just raise steam and go to the east coast of the United States. They wouldn't attempt to fight the Kita Butai. But if they do, what we said would happen. But if they didn't, then that would be Pearl Harbor. The naval base
What I would
damage.
actually propose is that they would likely raise steam and then move to different ports in Hawaii, because whilst it's entirely possible that they would decide we can't stay here, they're even worse off in open water, because having seen the fact that the Japanese have deployed midget submarines prior to the attack, there is a great deal of likelihood that the American Navy is going to realize that, okay, we detected and sank a number of midget subs. Who deploys midget subs? Fleet subs. What is going to attack us on the way to the East Coast? Subs. It's not going to be the Kita Butai, but it's going to be a number of submarines that they're going to be scared of, so they're not going to leave Hawaiian waters. They're likely going to shift around the islands, trying to find larger harbours like Pearl for them to hide in and wait for the carriers to come back. They're going to wait for repair ships and material to come back to start repairing port facilities and airfields. It's very unlikely they're going to sail out and leave Hawaii. Because it must be noted that whilst it wasn't actually a US state, at no point would the US consider abandoning Hawaii at all. That is not on the table for them, both politically and
Because
militarily.
it's also Hawaii has a lot of shallow water around it.
That's part of the reason that I believe it was Colorado that sailed out and just beached herself outside of Pearl. Because not only is there a lot of shallow water around Hawaii, but it's also close enough that they can risk that. If it's a case of they leave and start moving into open water, that just makes them bigger targets for submarines, and they are not going to make that risk.
The Japanese did have a subfleet picket line deployed to the west of Pearl Harbor, not the east.
Also, the fact of at the time before they sort of sort everything out and organised, do they actually know where the Japanese have come from?
They knew roughly what direction the Kita Butai came from,
Direct
but
bearing-wise.
it's only sort of wishful thinking that the entire fleet is in that direction. What ended up happening was that the Kita Butai, from what I recall from plans, was that they would sortie, they would mobilize into their attack waves, they would move southward and then come in from the west of Hawaii, in general terms, and then move eastward and north and then come back into the fleet.
Frangible, strafing AA is not something that's an early war. Well, it is, but in this case, it's really not required. The AA of the standards is a bunch of 5H25 open mounts and some Chicago pianos. That's not gonna stop a determined Kita Butai strike from getting through, be it dive bombers or torpedo bombers.
No, it was not, unfortunately.
Well, no, the P-40s would if they weren't engaged by twice their number of Zeros, which have escorted the strike package in.
I mean,
Just
yeah,
before-
Britt, there is about 30 to 40 aircraft still knocking around against, a couple hundred. There were some pilots who did absolutely decide, I know, I'm going to go fight the Japanese in the skies. And some of them came back. A number of them did not. In fact, one of the missions in Battleship Pacific, battle stations, is you are one of those pilots who is in the air. I hated that mission because I can't fly those planes for shit, but still.
It just takes a single flight jumping the strike aircraft to disrupt the formation. I mean...
Not on an attack run.
And
I mean,
also,
but
also-
wasn't that what the former did a lot though in the Mediterranean,
well,
where they
did.
would just act like they were going to jump attacking formation. The formation would just break up.
Yeah, but the thing is, those are aircraft that weren't escorted by fighters. Because most of the time, Fleet Corps 10 and the Reggio Marina went to go bomb the British, they went outside the range of BF-109 cover or Marchetti cover. Whereas here, the strikes are guarded by flights of Zeros, who will jump the jumpers, and the strike will reform relatively quickly once that first jump has taken place. But then you're engaged with the Zeros, and that's it. You knocked down 1, perhaps 2 Japanese aircraft out of the strike, and that's it.
But you broke up the attacking flight, which means they're probably not going to hit their targets, which means...
No, Foxo, this isn't the Mediterranean. This is a massive strike package broken up by a few fighters that's then reformed miles from its target. Like, it's not... They're not going to have any effect. It's not going to do anything. But yeah, sending Enterprise to attack or harass the Kido-Butai is a good way to get Enterprise sunk. Yeah, bear in mind, if the cap of 3 American carriers couldn't stop the strike that got Hornet in 1942 at Midway, and couldn't stop the strikes that got Lexington at Coral Sea, what makes you think that a ragtag collection of P-40s and P-36s are going to in any way have any meaningful effect on reducing the amount of damage that the standard class battleships take? They were never going to wipe out the entire fleet. They were going to get anywhere between 1 to 6, depending on how lucky they are. That frangible for the loss of a carrier. That's no, we don't take those. You don't trade. You don't trade a Yorktown for some aviators.
So on a side topic, how does the P-40, the early ones, compare to the Zero, given they're land-based aircraft?
Not super well, but certain pilots were absolutely able to pull it off.
That's not fair on the P-40.
No, I know. The P-40s were great aircraft, but against, a bunch of Zeros, even against a single Zero, the Zero can outmaneuver it and outspeed it, but the P-40 in the right hands is still a mean machine.
Well, no, RAG, the Zero's not insane, it's just the Japanese pilots know how to use it, and they've been using it for a good 2 years at this point. They've got their doctrine, they know their aircraft.
So remembering, it wasn't the Zero developed around the same time the Hurricane was?
Yes.
Yes.
We know from the Battle of Britain that the older aircraft can still kick ass if they're given good pilots.
Yeah, Britcop, the Essex Swarm doesn't appear until late 43. Because the Essex Swarm isn't laid down.
This is entirely what happens at Pearl Harbor if Pearl Harbor goes differently.
Yeah.
That's what this entire conversation is about.
And the thing is, the Japanese can extend the war by 2 years by playing their cards right. Because here's the thing. Yes, the Essex Swarm exists. But the Essex Swarm only exists in late 43, early 44. You get Essex replacements in early 43, and the Swarm arrives in late 43, 44. If the
French pilots more think about when it was developed, not when it actually entered service.
And you don't have the Swarm being developed until...
So, with the P-40...
The irony of a Korean saying Banzai should not be lost on anybody.
So, with the P-40 versus Zero, it's basically about energy. Then, who has the most energy? Because by the sounds of it, the P-40 comes in with an energy advantage, it can shoot down the Zero. But if they get energy neutrality, the Zero wins.
I mean, yes, maybe, depends. it's like nothing in air combat around this period, like especially during the mid war from 40 to 43 is the period in air combat where basically nothing is set in stone, and you have all sorts of matchups going on with victories achieved where you wouldn't expect them to be and losses achieved where you wouldn't expect them to be. It's that period where well, no, you've got a similar amount sunk, but just they're not recoverable.
Yeah, and that's only if they sortie to fight. What's more likely is they're going to sortie to move harbour, because they can't stay in Pearl because, again, the port facilities are fucked. They can't leave because they will be fucked, because as soon as the Keto Butai realises that they're sortying...
At Hood, they basically have no choice. There's nowhere else.
No, if they leave, they are fucked.
No, they are not.
They will.
No, they're not.
As soon as the Keto Butai notices that the standards have left harbour and are moving into open water, they're either going to move to fight them in air tactics, or they're going to start moving their submarines. At which point, again, a lot of them are going to be sunk or heavily damaged to the point they have to be abandoned.
Hood, if they run east, the Keto Butai is already going west, and the Japanese submarines that are west of the islands can't catch them. The Japanese submarines are fast on the surface. The standards are faster at their cruising speed, and the Japanese submarines can't crank up to their maximum speed of 18-19 knots at the ranges from Japan they are now at, because they will not be able to return to Japan. So,
Doesn't Japan have dedicated sub-tenders assigned to them?
They do, but none of them are in the operational theatre
That's
right
mostly
now.
for refueling and rearming.
Yeah, they're not in the operational
Yeah, so they
theatre.
can refuel at
are.
at sea the submarines.
Yes, but they're not in the operational theatre. And by the time they get there, well, no, the Keto Butai can't head further east. They don't have
the range for it.
They don't have the fuel. The Keto Butai is basically the Keto Butai can hang around for a day, and then they have to go home.
I can't remember. Carriers still need to be at speed at this point to launch aircraft, don't they?
No, depends what they're launching. It depends. Like, usually, like, if they're launching fighters, they just have to turn into the wind. If they're launching strike aircraft, they usually have to, turn into the wind and put on speed.
Okay, so the carrier's actual fuel situation will dictate how long they can actually stay around during strike ops, just physically.
Honestly, I think if there is a strike launched against the leaving standards, it will be the third strike that was already ready. And if that fails, then that's basically it. And the Keto was like, right, okay, we've bombed the shit out of Pearl Harbor. The standards are going away to the east coast. The west coast. So they're not going to be a threat for us for a couple of months. Okay, it's not quite what we wanted, but we've still been given the time we wanted to run around in the West Pacific. Fuck it, we'll take it.
So then my question would be, if they do find the standards, do they have armor-piercing bombs that can actually do serious damage to them? Because if I'm correctly, they were using modified 18-inch shells.
16-inch, but they don't need
16-inch.
They don't need them if the vessel is manoeuvring at sea, because the dive bombers will be going for superstructure damage at that point, so they'll be carrying the standard Japanese 277s and 60-kilogram bombs on the valves, and the main "we're going to kill the ship" will be the B-5Ns. The dive bombers will be there to cause chaos and havoc to the standards. Get them manoeuvring, get them turning, get them focused on the dive bombers, while the torpedo bombers come in to deliver the actual ship-killing power of that strike. How long will it take to repair the base? I have no fucking idea, and none of us have any way of knowing.
It would take a long time.
It would just depend on how much effort the US was willing to go to. Because they might...
For at the time, their main fleet base in the Pacific, they're going to go to every effort.
Because when Malta was hit by raids, the Royal Navy put a lot of effort into keeping it going.
Because Malta was, at the time, the nearest base that we had to Italy to
Yeah.
either attack it or to provide cover for ships moving through that part of the Mediterranean. Again, America is not going to abandon Hawaii. That is not an option at all.
Yeah, but so could they pull a Malta on it and keep it in service despite being damaged?
Yes. Again, that's why my thing about they're not going to leave, they're going to move ports to other ports, even if they have to break up the battle fleet to do so. That's going to be their best option because they are not going to leave. That is not an option. Leaving means they are effectively militarily giving up Hawaii for the time being. They cannot do that.
So
I will concede that yes, they might not get slaughtered by Japanese submarines, but again, America doesn't know that. They don't know where the submarines are. They only know that midget submarines are in the area, which means that fleet submarines will have deployed them, which means, as far as they know, the Japanese could have sent their entire submarine force to sit outside Hawaii waiting for the American fleet to show up, which they are not going to risk moving unless they have an anti-submarine screen, which is going to take more time to move up and also going to take a lot more fuel and crew to do effectively. They aren't going to do that, especially if they know that the carriers are coming back, and especially if they can get word back to America to say, we've been attacked, we need material, we need builders, we need repairmen, we need them here immediately. Can you send them over now? That is the extent of their communiques. They are not going to leave Hawaii.
yeah, so essentially they're going to wait for Pearl Harbor to put its fires out and then come back in. Because Pearl Harbor's still the safest place for them.
It's the safest place that they can gather in one contiguous unit. There are other harbours, I forget the name, that can take at least a couple of standards, if not one. Not all of them at the same time, but again, there are enough of them that they can probably remain there. If they have to remain in shallow waters, then so be it. They're going to see that as a good trade-off, especially if they can position the cruisers and destroyers at either end of that channel or around them and say, this is the screen, protect the battleship. Even if they decide that that's what they want to do, it's what they're going to have to do because they do not want to leave. They cannot.
I think, as I said, Hood, that they can leave.
They can't.
They can.
That's them giving up on Hawaii, effectively. They cannot do that politically. They cannot do that militarily.
Well, no,
it's not something that they're going to do.
The ships can leave. The US will not leave. The US will not leave Hawaii.
But can the standards leave?
Yes,
because they're not fully stocked in port, are they?
They have.
Because I don't think they were docked fully fueled.
If not, they can be.
A number of them were.
They can be met by fuel oilers. They can be met by fuel oilers halfway.
Yeah, but aren't the fuel oilers with the carriers?
No.
And have been keeping the carriers fueled?
No.
Because
no, the carriers were not that far away to require that kind of thing.
And also
because the US doesn't have a lot of fast fleet oilers at the start of the.
They don't need fast fleet oilers. The slow fleet oilers will do, because they're coming out from the continental United States.
Fair.
They are went for fuel at Taranto, and they did. Fuel tanks are, surprisingly enough, very toughly built things, because they need to be resistant to shot, shell, and just general wear and tear. Like if some drunk git trashes a truck into the base of it, you don't want it bursting. RBG, the slow fleet oilers aren't going to Pearl. They're gonna meet the battleships half or 3/4 of the way to the continental United States. Also, Fox, it's important to bear in mind the ranges these ships have. Like, fully fueled, a Standard can go all the way point to point from the west coast of the United States, from the east coast of the United States, without going through the Panama Canal. Like, the ranges on ships are insane. They just have to be at cruising speed to get them. So, on a quarter of a tank, at 8 knots, yeah, they can do Pearl Harbor. So, like, do a short dash at 21 knots from Pearl Harbor to safely to the east of it, and then drop down to 7-6 knots for the rest of the journey to San Diego.
Yes, but that follows the assertion that they're going to abandon Pearl Harbor and
They're
leave
not
Hawaii.
They're not abandoning Pearl Harbor.
They are. Them leaving it is saying we can't stay here. It is not safe.
Okay, and this implies that the US isn't going to do what it always does, which is act realistically in military situations and not just do petty pride bullshit.
But if the
British-
Kilo Butai is leaving, why leave?
Why leave?
Again,
Because
like
they
this,
can't
I
maintain-
completely
they
disagree
can't-
that they're going
they
to
can't-
leave.
They can't maintain the ships. They can't repair the ships. They need the space in the port for the repair work that's going to go on. There is no point having these ships here. They can't be fueled. They can't be repaired. They can't be rearmed.
There are other ports in Hawaii that can
Not-
take a standard that can
Yeah,
take.
No, yeah, but that
They can swap them out, fleet. It's not going to be a case of right.
Hood,
we're gonna leave.
Hood, you're fun. No, that doesn't work like that. Ships, battleships, and cruisers of the Second World War period usually require a dedicated naval base. You don't just throw a battleship into a commercial port and be like, job done. There's a reason why that.
Can
I'm
though.
not saying it's going to be easy, fleet. I'm saying that it's.
They're not
I
going
completely
to do
disagree.
It. Historical precedent proves that it's never happened. The US has never functioned like that. They're not going to do it. They're gonna sail for San Diego. It is the militarily smart thing to do. They're not abandoning Hawaii. The Navy is just temporarily relocating its very valuable, irreplaceable assets to a safe place. Destroyers will probably remain. A cruiser squadron or two will probably remain. The battleships will go. Because they are the very priceless, irreplaceable pieces of kit the USN has. And to just keep them somewhere where they have been bombed without knowing what the hell's going on, and without the carriers there, well, to be fair, the carriers are also probably going to have to divert to God knows where. It's like, a fleet can't be maintained in Pearl anymore. And the other facilities around the other islands don't have the kits to deal with even a small number of large US ships. So, the option is clear. The logical, safe, and strategically prudent thing is to withdraw the carriers and the battleships to San Diego until basic repairs can be effected. And they don't have to be the full set of repairs, just as soon as the basic repairs are completed in like 2 to 3 to 6 months, then the battleships and the carriers will return. That's all it needs. They just keep them safe for the first 3 to 6 months of the war. If you want to, send the carriers off to be based out of Australia. Like the Royal Australian Navy has the facilities to host large British task groups. They can host the US carriers.
Does it?
Yeah.
In range though? 'Cause I thought the main base was in New Zealand and Sydney.
Well, yeah, but Sydney is closer to the Coral Sea, Dutch East Indies than Hawaii is. At least to this point. Sorry, not Hawaii. It's closer than San Diego is. Like, we're talking the moorings are wrecked, the dockyard cranes are wrecked, the fuel lines are wrecked. Like, the port, like, Pearl Harbor's just fucked. You couldn't refuel.
It's a couple of months repair.
You couldn't refuel a fucking rowboat.
Yeah, you can. You just need jerry cans to refuel a rowboat.
You fucking don't underestimate
Buckets of water.
It's just, I'm sure if the US needs to, they could get a line of sailors with jerry cans to refuel their battleships.
No, that's not the. Look. You don't. The US has never, well, most of the time, when MacArthur's not in charge, has not waged wars on prestige points and points of pride. The only exceptions I can think of are MacArthur's bullshit and Halsey sailing through storms. Apart from
Yeah,
that,
but points of pride is one thing, but morale is another thing. Like, the Americans did some stupid things to keep morale high.
but not stupid where it risks their battleships that are still the core of their doctrine, because they haven't been sunk.
Are the battleships of the core of the Doctrine at
Yes.
this point?
They are, because they're still alive.
Because you have that whole big conflict between the carrier admirals and the battleship admirals at this point.
At this point, well, no, they're still at this point you have the two separate doctrines, which means that the battleships will demand that they be kept safe, as will the carriers, but they will probably be operating separately. But either way, as you've said, basically you've delayed the Pacific War by about 6 months, but apart from that, it just runs as normal. And I'm going to bury that now and move on. Next questions, please. Well, no, there are no wrecked battleships in Pearl Delta. The port's fucked. That's the whole point of this scenario,
Yeah.
that the battleships are safe, but the port's fucked.
But ports can be repaired relatively quickly to basic operation.
But for that basic period, they're not going to base anything there, because they need the port clear to actually do the repair work, uninterrupted. Like, if
I
you
mean, if it's land-based damage, then
like, you can have ships more there as a safe harbour, but you're not basing anything there. Like, if,
Them being moored there is them being based there, fleet.
no, that's not how it works.
Ah.
You
it's
can
like
have- you can have something
if
moored there
the
temporarily.
battleship's there, moored there with its torpedo netting out,
That's
it's
not a thing
based
that they do
there.
anymore.
I thought the USA was still using torpedo netting to stop aerial torpedoes and submarine launched torpedoes.
Yes, but those were heavy assemblies not mounted on ships.
Oh yeah, but like if you got all that set up at the port and the battleships are based there,
But then,
then they're based
why
there.
are you two so insistent on breaking U.S. doctrine just to satisfy like it's not, they're not gonna. Can we move on, please?
No.
Please, I don't want to talk about this stupid question anymore. Why am I so insistent the US fleet would up and leave? Because it's what they would do. What's my favourite hybrid battleship design? If you're talking about battle carriers, there isn't one because they're all trash.
Now you can't go wrong with Kearsarge. She's just a cool design,
I
impractical,
Yeah,
but cool.
I can go.
Shot it.
Yeah, I can. I can.
Kearsarge just looks funky.
The only good part about Kearsarge is the fact that she's busted good in Azure Lane. That's it.
Yeah, Kearsarge just looks like a funny ship. Not a
Like,
good ship, a funny ship.
she's not even funny. She's just depressingly shit. We don't
Yes,
talk about
okay, I agree. The 80s goofy let's convert an Iowa into a battle carrier design, I like those as well.
I hate them because they lean too much into Mike Sparks' way of thinking.
I mean, they make sense.
They don't.
You're not gonna use a battle carrier for things like full flight craft, so you're gonna use VTOL and helicopters. So
Yeah.
as a
but, you know,
marine helicarrier or battle carrier, it makes perfect sense.
Wait,
yeah,
okay,
but you also-
so if
you also
Vanguard had to
define-
survive to the 70s and 80s, do you think she would have got a battle carrier refit with Harriers?
No, because
No.
battle carriers are dumb. Even in the Cold War. The reason you don't refit an Iowa to carry Harriers is because it makes no bloody sense. You have a large fleet of LHDs that are better capable of doing the job. And
I mean,
the
that's
Iowa-
RBG. That's because the Tigers were refitted to be helicarriers essentially,
And
or helicopter carriers. It's
basically
not a case of
Basically, they were refitted to be flagships of ASW hunting groups, providing a heavy service punch, flag facilities, and the ability to operate large numbers of more capable helicopters than their escorts could. Converting Vanguard into a Harrier carrier is just cursed in every fucking way imaginable. And it's making me want to throw my boot across the room.
The 3 Ts? Sierra?
Talos,
Talos, Terrier,
Terrier, and I wanted to say Termite, but it's not that. Carter. thank you.
Carter.
Yeah, like there's this.
I just never heard them refer to that.
Like, you go through this period where gun warships are fucking useless, and then they come back into relevance for a brief period. As in, not big gun warships, but just the fact that guns on warships are like useful again.
Okay. Franchball does a very good point. If you take 2 of the turrets off Vanguard, you know you cannot make a new Vanguard.
No, you don't. Build,
No.
you don't build surface combatants. You do not build new big gun combatants past the year 1944. The only exception to that are fucking the Soviet Stalingrad's post-war, which actually had a fairly reasonable concept behind their creation and would have had long-term rebuild and refit utility going into the 70s, 80s, and 90s. That is the only exception. Someone's going through the Ship Bucket Modern Battleship design contest, I see. Vanguard's not going to get into range. ASMs are anti-ship missiles just going to tear her apart. The Stalingrad class, they're not made out of paper mache. They're armored to resist 8-inch shell fire.
Yeah, it was the Soyuz which are paper mache, wasn't it?
Well,
The Stalingrads were actually buildable by the USSR.
well, so was the Soyuz, but they would have been flawed in their execution. Not bad, but flawed in their execution.
Cause I remember the Soyuz were the ones with the composite armor belt. That was two different armor belts on top of each other.
Yeah, because of a lack of rolling mills that could handle the thickness. Like I said, flawed, but not. But then again, it's hard. Their thickness overall would still have been comparable to something like an Iowa. So it's not completely terrible. Like I say, flawed in execution, not terrible. Zuikaku, missiles don't care about your armor. They're going through, Chief. It's fucking happening. There's no battleship armor around today that would stop any of the world's currently in use missiles. If you hit the armor,
Yes, it will.
no, it'll go straight through. It'll go straight through. And if the first missile doesn't do it, the second one and the third one will. The fourth one will. And the fifth one will.
Okay, so that is not how it works in terms of just go straight through. Wireless, it will do it won't like particularly. It's not. I think people imagine it as like a penetration game, which is a thing that men struggle with a lot. And if you do speak with your doctor,
Shut up! Get to your point already.
No.
but the problem is that when you say 220 or 211 kilograms of high explosive, it's high explosive shaped charges. Unless I shot able to use regularly. So it's also going at Mach 3 and spraying a bunch of jet fuel onto you. And yeah, I don't think you should ask. I mean, you can ask Bismarck how getting a lot of kinetic weapon or kinetic damage to its belt does in terms of its actual fucking performance. And the point is that either, even if it doesn't do a nuclear warhead, which is actually standard practice in this time period for a response in terms of a surface gunfight, because the US cheats. It is shaped charges on a lot of these missiles. They are Talos specifically is a high explosive shaped charge. And both of these are supersonic. I don't know where you're getting this. Talos is absolutely supersonic. It is Mach 3.5. So is Terrier.
Once again, me and Sierra teaming up to squash the battleships can stop missiles with their armor myth. Subikaku, even a standard SM-2 can kill a battleship.
Also, yeah, they don't target the belt specifically. They target your superstructure. So,
yeah. So what? Ooh, your belt armor's gonna stop our missiles. Yeah, good luck not having any superstructure, fire control, weapon systems, fucking anything.
But this is also the 1960s, so again, it's Bismarck isn't particularly a good comparison in terms of the actual what supersonic things do to a shell, because it's mostly just the fact that it goes supersonic and penetrates through.
Yeah, and also.
What do you mean never penetrated? What?
And also, Bismarck was penetrated.
Hold on.
She was riddled
Hold on.
with 14 and 16-inch hits. Oh,
It's also a large bomb doesn't have to penetrate to fuck up the inside of a ship.
It significantly does better if it gets penetrated, which is absolutely what happens, because what the current missiles are in the 1960s are absolutely just fucking big ass shaped charges.
And can we also, Sierra, can we bring it forward to the modern day just so people don't think that the modern day has changed it now that armor's not a thing? Because modern day missiles are worse.
Armor is a thing.
Armor protectiveness is not technically a thing, but the protective capabilities of a vessel is.
Oh no, I know. I'm talking about people saying, "Herder, modern warships have no armor, therefore armored ship stop missile." Fucking.
So frangible, that is untrue. She was still in combat capability, or she still had combat capability while Rodney scored a penetrating. I think it was both.
He did shoot directly into the bridge.
Yeah, KGV directly shot into the bridge. Rodney put shells into her into the belt.
There was also a 16-inch hole in the bridge, I believe, as well. I think it hit after KGV's liquefied everyone in there, but it still hit it.
But in terms of the 1960s, a big problem with the analysis of just we should build battle carriers is that the big calculus, and this is sort of the reason why I believe that post 1945 the USN is at its peak, not during World War II, it's after, is because you basically have the response of US surface ships the missile cruisers like Boston and the like. Turns out that the Soviet gun cruisers will not have gun cruiser capabilities in terms of an anti-surface warfare, because all the USN's gonna do is just lock you on with a missile and just shoot it at you, and then you die. Because two fights fair in a war that has nuclear warheads slinging around left and right.
Yeah, exactly. Why would
So this takes place before there's missile countermeasures, essentially?
Well, no, missile
Which
countermeasures
one?
exists at the time.
Because the 1960s, because
Yes.
chaff was still a thing, and jamming was still a thing for warships, wasn't it?
So, nope. Well, jamming is basically, in this time period, is potentially trying to obscurate the directors of the missile. Chaff isn't so much. Also, it doesn't particularly help, because what you're trying to do is try to seduce the directors of these missiles, but Suikaku, every fucking missile in this time period is generally going to be SAP. That includes even Chinese shit like Exocet, and in this case, Talos and Terrier.
Yep.
Hold on, let me just...
Well, you say that, RBG, but hard counters to missiles have always existed. It's just their effectiveness has varied wildly since the end of the Second World War. You have a...
So, the SMs are development of Tartar and Terrier, so this is kind of a weird point to bring up the SMs. I was gonna do a What Is Moon, try to advertise until I realized, wait a minute, I don't have my fucking videos up right now.
Also, I'd appreciate if you didn't do that while I'm streaming, because that might get me all sorts of trouble with the big platform.
I don't think Steve on his 20 mils hard counter gun miss.
They would not fleet.
But the 1960s is also very funny because it depends on what area, because you can get the later Terriers or Talos, or not Terrier, but Terrier and Tartar, which can actually shoot down missiles. The early missiles are not particularly that, what do you call, hard to detect.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way.
They're not
And-
super agile either.
Yeah, and if you've got the dumb large missiles that the early Russian ASMs are, they're about the size of a small jet aircraft and about as fast, and they're flying in a straight line. Radar-guided aircraft guns are probably gonna have a field day. Not
just
counting,
normally
not-
speaking,
not-
though, but like,
not even counting early fucking anti-air missiles. Like Terrier's gonna laugh at that. It's fucking absolutely.
American point defense, if we'll call it that in this stage, is basically a holdover from we've been fucking traumatized by the number of kamikazes. So our idea is to either throw enough lead into the air, whether that's from light anti-aircraft guns or whatever, to throw the enemy's incoming off course, or to outright put a hole in it so it goes down or explodes. The same thing is relatively relevant here, but it should also be pointed out that, yeah, the initial question was he who missile against battleship, it's still gonna fucking hurt.
I mean, there's also the big point. There's also 112 missiles, so at least depending on the early cruisers. So, good luck.
And 99% of those missiles fired are gonna hit. So yes,
I wouldn't put it that high. I wouldn't put it that
It
high.
doesn't need to be that high. It only needs to be maybe 30% of your swarm hitting.
No, what I mean is,
It's like,
I don't mean in terms of they're guaranteed to hit. I mean is if no interference, there's no reason the guidance system isn't going to guide that missile to the target. So you basically have to shoot it down if you don't want it to impact your face.
It's also a
but
nuclear.
when early, especially the early of the, was it? Weren't they really unreliable when it came to just hitting things?
I believe that was air
so-
targets, though. For things like anti-ship work,
Yes and no. The big problem is that the early Talos is rife with different productions, and so you have the issues of like the original, what is essentially just P-47 like engine with a bunch of HVARs, and that's technically part of the Talos system. And then you have, original SAM N6, which doesn't have a rim designation, probably doesn't have that wall of accuracy issues, but it's also a pre-production missile. By Rim 8A, which is also SAM N6B, you pretty much are like gonna have the only primarily issue that I've read was basically the fact that you couldn't launch two of them at once, just because even though they're semi-reactive radar homing, the directors would be overloaded. They were essentially just terminal time on target.
For someone who doesn't know what missile terminology, what does that mean?
Okay.
Always happen when missiles are brought up.
Because I am the Sam man.
I know you are.
he is
but
Mr. Raytheon.
It always happens whenever Ramblings even delves slightly into missiles. You pop up like a bloody pelican.
Make those H for. What do you think missiles are? They are. They fucking. Who do you think makes them? It's fucking JHU-APL. They made fucking VT fusing. All of those missiles are fucking airburst.
Sierra on his descent to madness 2023 colorized.
What is a missile but a giant gyrojet weapon?
I mean, you say that, it's a guided gyrojet weapon.
I know, it's awesome.
But like, yeah, no, almost pretty much all of the history of SAMs has been literally just like, again, the people who make it is JHU-APL, and if you don't know that name, they made the VT fusing. I have a poster of it right over that fucking wall.
So what does terminal time on target mean?
Oh, okay, so when I say semi-active radar guiding homing, it basically means that the missile does not need to be illuminated all the way into. So think of it, there's like little pointers on these ships. On basically every single warship that has anti-aircraft missiles, there's little pointers called, they look like either satellites or like satellite dishes, stuff like that, and they have to point a beam of radar at a target. And the missile follows that beam onto target. Now, generally with modern missiles, what they use is a combination of not having that beam be pointed at a target. So it uses like a computer inside of it to guide itself nearby, and then the radar beam turns on and it follows that afterwards. This is like that. For Talos specifically, the issue has been that wireless, they've been able to get a semi-active radar beam rider, basically. They weren't able to get sort of a inertial system in it. So basically, they have to point that dish 24/7 under target. This is a thing with the earlier Terrier and Tartar systems. They were trying to fix it with Talos, but the reliability of the INS system with these guys have not been particularly that well.
So if you interfere with the beam, the missile loses its guidance, essentially.
Yes and no. It significantly depends because, especially for Talos, because Talos is a funny example because you have different methods. So up until its unified Talos, which is RIM 8E, there are variants of Talos that do not have terminal guidance because, in a fit of irony, they don't need terminal guidance because the radiation of the nuclear warhead would pretty much kill it. So it's not and it kind of hints at what the point of the SAM-8, the nuclear versions of Talos are, because they're not meant for aircraft, they're meant for surface targets. So whenever you have a gunfight with the Talos cruiser, it's not a fucking good fight.
You better hope you kill it before it nukes you.
I cast nuclear missile.
But okay, this is from Okiboat, which is one of my favorite websites to talk about this kind of stuff. But the RIM 8A and the RIM 8B are, you can kind of see with the warheads, they're different stuff. In terms of the actual like head itself, RIM 8A is the one with these semi-active radar antennas on it. RIM 8B does not have those antennas and instead just has a nuclear warhead because fuck you. Simply fire a larger nuclear missile back. They don't have that yet because the USN pretty much got it first. So, your options were, if you're talking about the Soviets, a nuclear bomb, like a skip bomb, basically. Other than that, it's not particularly something that you could have.
So.
Oh, this also applies to the Terriers too. So you could potentially have with USS Long Beach. I think it was it Long Beach?
Long Beach did have all of them, yes.
So no, Yes. Okay. So you could potentially have 6 nuclear weapons basically launched at you at the same time. And this is the era where you're still having Soviet Sverdlov class as the Soviet primary method of actually attacking the USN carriers. So good luck. It's also just to point out also all weather, so because it's a fucking missile, it doesn't really care about the weather. Well, it does, but you know.
Sverdlov appears over the horizon. US cruiser escorting the carrier. Thanks for playing. Goodbye.
I mean, it doesn't. Well, over the horizon doesn't exist, but it's.
No, I said.
I was talking
about the horizon.
You mean on the horizon?
Yes. So the reason why I was pointing that out is because Tartar, while they could potentially have nuclear weapons or nuclear warheads, I don't think any of the actual Tartar-equipped ships ever had it with the Tartars.
So the nuclear-equipped Tartar missiles were essentially nuclear danger close?
Nope. They'll actually, with the warheads that they have, it will nominally get out of range of the blast effect. It's not a particularly big nuke, and it's also not got a decent amount of range, but you're also asking for... So, I'll get to that, because it's kind of curious of whether or not the US think... Anyways, as far as I know, they never considered the Tartar to have early Tartar ships to, because how do I explain this? The Tartar equipped ships either were not equipped to deal with sort of the strike mission of shoot nuclear weapon at enemy, kill them. That, or they already had a different weapon with it, so the Providence class, I believe, would have, or not the Providence. What the hell? What am I thinking of?
You're dipping into Star Wars now, my old chum. I know there's also cruisers called Providence. Don't shoot me.
Are you talking about the light cruiser or the heavy cruiser conversions?
I'm thinking of the Albany. Sorry. So Albany is the one with Tartars and Talos, and they would have, you just use the Talos to fucking shoot nuclear warheads instead of having the Terriers do it, But so air denial with the nuclear warhead against aircraft nominally does exist with the Terriers. I don't know if you could do that with early Talos. You could do that with later unified Talos. It's kind of unreliable because it's, I mean, at this point, it's really hard to really shoot down like aircraft with a nuclear blast, especially with, I mean, you could do it when it's at the center, but like, the thing about aircraft is that they move a lot quicker than something like ships, so.
So, wait, how would you use an air-to-air point defense nuclear missile, so a surface-to-air missile for anti-air usage without fraying your own radars?
You have them fly at a very long distance.
Oh, so they're like extreme range weaponry.
I mean,
For that type of missile, yes. Like you don't use that to nuke the aircraft that's 11 feet away or something.
you want to have it be like 5-6 miles away.
Yeah. It's the same sort of idea behind it's the same sort of idea in terms of ranging for things like Genie, which is a lot later and a lot different in terms of its type and usage, but the idea is still essentially the same. You don't have it be super big warhead in terms of its nuclear payload because you don't want to fuck yourself over whilst you're fucking the enemy over. It's also why the Genie is so funny.
It's also like the nominal target is also like low flying bombers, which they don't maneuver that well. So
Yeah.
But did low-flying bombers exist at that point?
Yeah,
low
Yeah.
flyers? Yes.
That's why everything had
It's
slowly got
almost
higher and
exactly
higher and
the
higher
same
and higher in
numbers.
altitude. But
That is the realm of usually low flyer interceptors or the lower tier of anti-aircraft defenses. So that's usually the cannons, or if you're the USM, because this is what you relied upon, tactical air defense.
okay, so I guess this is before the air launch cruise missile then?
I mean, technically, yeah, I mean, that exists, but you know.
So this would be before the point that
I-
big strategic bombers at really high altitude become a solid threat to a ship.
I mean, so the issue is, of course, that it's whether or not you consider ASMN2 as a cruise missile. I mean, it could be a glide bomb, but like the definition of cruise missile at this point is like, does it cruise to the target? Is it guided? I suppose that the definition does kind of change afterwards, but I'm not I don't know the direct answer to that, because again, it also, the ability of the USN to just spam ASM N2s or the bat missiles would just kind of kill you, especially since they're basically outside of your effective AA range. So, you know.
Oh, yep.
So, like, what would have been the defense for these ships against the high-flying Soviet bombers then?
You're not getting targeted by the high-flying Soviet bombers because unless they're dropping like nuclear weapons. I mean, if they're dropping nuclear weapons at an effective range, you're gonna get shot down by a Talos or Terrier. more low-flying targets would be again shot down. So, a surprising amount of Terriers or Terrier Talos performance is just pointing up straight and then shooting it into the air.
Okay.
It is not a threat vector that the USM was entirely devoted to, as the U.S. Army was. Most of their programs were from. Fuck, I forgot the actual name of the. Was it Buellard?
It may
There's a university that made the original Nike program. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Holy shit! It's not as deep as JHUAPL because you get all the rich Virginians there.
Stanford?
Bell Labs. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's the. Was it Bell Labs actually? Wait a minute.
Who did Nike? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. It was Bell Laboratories, which is Nokia as well.
Yes.
How was the USS Canberra converted to missile reserve after World War II? The whole frame was nice enough, and they weren't particularly gonna care too much about which Baltimore's was converted into which carrier or which missile cruiser. I believe Boston was the weird one out of them, just because, or out of the two.
Yeah, the Bostons had the half gun, half missile layout.
I mean, that was Canberra as well.
Yes,
They're the same class.
Okay, since you're here, when did the big strategic bombers be able to use the big air launch cruise missiles to hit ships?
Hold on, I have a
Depends on
direct
what you mean-
source for this.
Depends on what you mean by big strategic bomber, and depends on what you mean by missile that hits ships.
Yeah.
I was sort of thinking stuff like that. When did, say, the Tu-95 and
Well,
the sort of
well, the Tu-95.
just strategic bombers that could carry several cruise missiles
The Tu-95.
and just volley fire them and leave?
The Tu-95 never did. That was never the role the Tu-142 was slotted into. Tu-142 was always gathering intelligence, ASW work. Whereas the Tu-16 was the first to carry an anti-ship missile in its belly. Though it was only singular, but it was a large lad. Then the Tu-22Ms also did the same, but the Tu-16s are then obviously upgraded to having more missiles that they carried. And then, yeah, it was only really the Soviets that really went in for it. The British, the Americans never really did, because they never really needed to. We had other ways to deliver anti-shipping ordnance.
I'm trying to remember which one carried the Celts.
Tu-16.
Yeah, Celts for Tu-16s, so... I mean, also it depends on what you...
Although,
Yeah, KS-1 enters, and then...
Although obviously the Celts were a later Tu-16 edition. The first anti-ship missiles were different.
What, the Kennels?
Yeah, the large lads.
Although, normally speaking, those are particularly strategic bombers, because the Soviets absolutely argued, and it had some credence that the Tu-16s and Tu-22s were not actually strategic bombers, and were actually just tactical naval strike bombers instead of strategic bombers. You big bunk. It doesn't really matter, but you know. Bears cannot carry P-7000s. Or 700s, sorry. Also, like... P-700s are the least of the threats of the... I mean, especially just because you need a shit ton of them to get through. Even before Aegis.
Right, well, it's 7:30. I need to go and do the washing up before I go to bed.
I need a...
No, what's gonna happen? I'll count the USA. Fuck. UN plan to defend against them, but yeah.
Well, the USM planned to defend against the strategic or the tactical naval strike bombers of the Soviets by just throwing a bunch of cap at them, and then B, having a robust and solid air defense system that would be later on. So Typhoon kind of influences this, but later on it's really just the NTU programs and then into Aegis. While it's like particularly it's a nominally big threat, especially during the 70s and 80s. It really comes out into its stride within the 80s, but by then you're a bit too late because NTU is proliferated as well as the first becomings of Aegis combat system. You can certainly kind of argue that the like there might be a gap within the late 70s because Typhon kind of flops, but SM really is a lot better than what Typhon was supposed to be.
Okay, so the scenario from the which Tom Clancy book was it?
If it's anything other than like Red Storm Rising, because I think
it might be Red Storm Rising, where you get the Soviet attack on the US carrier group and...
Oh yes, that's Red Storm Rising. Anyways, that thing is bullshit.
Okay.
Yeah, he hates Red Storm Rising for some reason.
It gets the wrong missiles on Ticonderoga. Its Tu-95s get plowed by Tu-22s. So the reason why that happens, and Larry Bonifredo stated this outright, is because we needed plot to convert, and that scenario is based around the USN gets rolled back and then lose control of Iceland, because it's not an interesting book. If they just immediately send 6 to 7 carrier groups, they just go bomb the Soviets off of Iceland and into the Kola Peninsula. That's not very fun, especially for the scenario. But it absolutely could be handled better because yes, those are F-35Cs. The reason why it's weird just because it just gets very misconstrued because it is a combat system which is data linked, which basically means that it coordinates with all the other ships to fulfill the air defense mission. Essentially, it's a team game, and Aegis combat system makes it a hell of a lot easier to coordinate all your teammates, because we all had that experience.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the effectiveness of, even like with the misconstrued random drone stuff, I mean, I would actually say that like it potentially, Aegis does not partially rely on satellites as well, that is the communications. Aegis can literally just operate off of one Ticonderoga and then all the NTU equipped ships. They do not need... satellites are a critical part of something like the BMD mission, but it is not relevant in the 80s, which is... You don't have a lot of satellites to begin with.
So,
you know what?
So,
go ahead. I'm gonna try to find a source.
So, does how Aegis work? Does it need a ship to do most of the processing? Then it can just link with all the other ships, or is it a case of each ship can do its own bit of essentially the work?
I have. Hold on. Where is it? I have a shit ton of where is it? Hold on, here you go. It's one... Where the hell is my Aegis? Well, I don't have the... Oh, there it is, everyone. La 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 la. There you go. Here's 5 different sources about this.
Ooh.
I have an entire list if you want it, but so how early Aegis combat system works is basically Aegis is at least there's I'm gonna divide it into 3 different phases, so to speak. Aegis does a lot of the unification of different pictures, so I call it the detection phase, where so if a ship, like let's say like a standard battle line has a ship be all the way over there and another ship be all the way over there for the air defense mission. They see different targets. Aegis can also link with both of them and communicate properly that, you know, hey, this is what they see, we can cooperate, this is what they see, they cooperate. So it unifies the picture and gives a bigger picture towards the air defense commander. Secondly, it coordinates what is the missiles themselves. So there'll be launch platforms. Aegis can nominally both direct, but also just leave up to the ships themselves to direct onto target. So it's a mix of, you know, they pass out targets, and then also Aegis guides them in with INS protocol and has them illuminate depending on what the engagement target is. This is entirely up to the air defense commander. Thirdly, Aegis is also responsible for both the ability for the air defense commander to both influence the battlefield by seeing both the bigger picture in the ammo expenditure, as well as just cooperate with his commander about, hey, you know, this is what's happening. Here's just a big picture that I can display to you. So it's weird to call, it's the first steps towards what we call cooperative engagement capability in modern Battlefield, and that is something you're going to see quite often as a terminology, especially in modern contexts. But it's basically just, how do I explain this? It's basically someone gets to control, like you're playing an RTS basically, and that's basically the best description, because back in the old days, missiles would be, or like ships would basically be playing by themselves, shooting down anti-aircraft, or like using their own anti-aircraft defenses to shoot down. Now, especially with Aegis going forward after 1985, it is a RTS being played by the air defense commander. That is the best description I could do in very layman's terms. And I think it gets the point across of how OP that gives, because it's now a cooperative game, and if you've ever played any team games, you know that working together is better than not. So
it's almost like to use the land combat analogy, you're given every squad a radio, pretty much.
A lot more than that. It's also giving each squad basically a laser rangefinder that you control that determines range and then tells what targets you have.
Okay.
I guess the equivalent would be radio, and then thermal imaging sensors, and then having each guy be hyper equipped to deal with long range targets, and then have some guys have grenadiers as well. So
Okay, that makes sense.
But again, it turns the air defense battlefield from like how many targets will each person engage into, okay, X ship is firing two missiles at this target, X ship is firing 4 missiles at this target, are these separate targets. It prevents overlap, so you don't have 2 missile or like 4 missiles going at the same target. And then you also have the ability to basically just say, or like coordinate everyone so that they're all on the same page.
So it kind of works to deal with a mass strike.
Oh, it is specifically designed against a mass strike.
Okay, yes. So you don't waste interceptor missiles, essentially.
As well as waste time, yeah.
Interesting.
Right, are we and can we?
No, to gunnery officer.
Should we have some more questions then? Seeing as these two have had their tangent. Quite an aggressive one it was at that.
Hold on, let me just post my... Where's my big text? Like, I have a text thing to do.
Sweet, that just sounds like you've got 2 explosions going off instead of 1, which is probably just as bad, because tandem
well,
warheads are what's used to beat stuff like ERA, aren't they?
It also it also significantly depends on the size of the warhead, because if it's just a javelin, it's not going to do a lot of, because just the sheer mass of a ship comparison to what javelin is supposed to do presents a jet that is not particularly that effective. So, you know, unrated projectile, stupid in hindsight, or just stupid. It's kind of just stupid.
It did give us a land mattress, which wasn't stupid. So.
Oh yes, yes, but like an anti-aircraft roll. Okay. You know, I forever am pissed off. I watched Dr. Alexander Clark's video on missiles, and I'm just like, not once did he mention like the cracked goddamn programs of missiles within like the 1930s. Like, how did you forget like the random ass like British theory of like, let me just have an anti-aircraft missile where it's guided by 2 aircraft in the air as the directors for it, and you have to put the missile have those 2 aircraft fly side by side near the target, like on each side of the target, and then it hits it. As an anti-aircraft missile.
So do you think you could get an unrotated projectile launcher to work if you had proxy fused ammunition?
Probably. But at that point, it's just, that's not an unrotated projectile, or like the initial mines itself. It's just like, that's just like a shitty like 1940s version of CRAM. What's your least favorite biscuit? I call it cracker in America. Genuinely, I hate ones with like not enough shortening, but like there's enough shortening in it that's like pissing you off.
Probably plain digestives.
I don't get why the British as a people call biscuits digestives, because that's like the most unappealing fucking sounding name ever.
It's a specific brand, and it's literally just marketing.
It's like, I know, but like, I made a joke. I forgot what the joke was. Oh god, I made this a while back. What the hell? It's like, oh yeah, it's called calling like flavored drinks kidney cleaners. It's like, why?
Because Britain, like, digestives started off as a scam that got turned into an actual biscuit. So
Yes. Take a BMP2's those aren't the BMP2. I don't. Okay, I'm not. What is the BMP2's missiles again? Isn't it Cornets?
I think they got Cornets, but that's the BMP2M, isn't it?
That's what is being talked about.
It's BM2Ms.
So Cornet upscale to a P100. That wouldn't. What would that do?
Hard to say.
Well, they're not. Yeah, they're Cornet M's. What does that even do? Like, it's kind of a weird question. Anyways.
So we probably fall out of the sky, because I don't think missiles work linearly. When it comes, you can't just scale them up directly.
That is true. Yes, you can't. I mean, it probably will fly just because it has enough engine fire or like engine power to do that. It's not gonna fire that far. Anyways.
What if the British, Bull Reeves asked, what if the British Empire was still going into the 1960s, was at the same level it was in 1914? Congratulations, the entire world is a shit place with lots of genocide and racism. Well done!
Okay, what is
So
that?
it's just the modern day.
What is like 1914 even? Like, okay, 1914, after everyone dies in Flanders or before everyone dies in Flanders?
I think he means before everyone dies in Flanders, the British Empire at the height of its... Well, not the height of its power, since that was post-World War II, but...
The height of the Empire was sort of post-World War One.
Yeah, the height of the Empire was 1920.
But like, But also, does it also include like the amount of random shit the British have to go to in terms of putting out fires in 1914 and applies it to the 1960s, or is it like the 1960s still has the issues of, I don't know, the Bangladesh crisis?
Yeah, I think he's basically saying, what if the British Empire is still around and intact in the 1960s and is still a superpower, but still has
1960s, so I do
Yeah,
not.
but the Empire is still around in the 60s, and even if it's at the height of its power, it's still going to have the crippling issues the British Empire had in the 1960s.
The only way you keep some form of large British state around is if you have the Imperial Federation MacGuffin appear in the fucking early part of the 20th century.
I can't wait until what the fuck Britain does in the 1960s with India.
I don't even want to think about that. All right, I'm deliberately putting that on the. Yeah, I'm not.
Actually, we were decolonizing India fully in the 60s, and their plan around it, well, the plan the Governor General wanted was essentially to break India up into 5-6 different states, because the way he saw it, it was India was too culturally diverse to be a single functional state outside the empire. He was a bit of a racist dickhead, if you can tell. But,
I mean, nominally speaking, he was sort of right, but like,
if you look how functional India is today,
I mean, it's a weird analysis, but like, yeah, no, India is actually relatively highly functional. It just depends on what region, just because of how India as a country is socially like diverse in terms of its also decentralization.
yeah, and it's a case of it works on a local level, but it's just it has.
I mean, it also depends on which part of India, because you have India like proper, and then you have like Bangladesh, which is not helped by the fact that the Pakistanis are trying to kill them.
Yeah. But an empire in the 60s is gonna head towards dominionization, no matter what happens. Which
Or
is,
just like anarchy. That'd be the funner one.
like anarchy, yes, but sort of the Central African bits are gonna explode because Rhodesia's a ticking time bomb. West Africa?
Oh, South Africa also this time period too is gonna get hilarious.
Yeah, South Africa's gonna explode. Rhodesia's gonna explode. East Africa?
At least it's
can
not any
probably
Boers
keep
anymore.
it together.
You've
Because
basically got this new British Empire collapsing into basically just the dominions being left, all of it funded by US and Soviet money.
What happens to the Middle East?
Well, the Middle East revolt anyway. Interesting thing.
The thing is, the Middle East is the one place that the Empire can keep down through force of arms. Africa, they can't.
I mean,
you see that, but it's kind of the opposite because
you
the
have
Empire did it successfully in East Africa.
Yeah, but this is the 60s.
But okay,
in the 60s,
it's
like,
60s with 60s issues, and the problem with that is because you have Egypt and Israel basically in the same sphere of influence. So I'm not saying that
nothing wrong here.
The thing is, like, they're under the thumb of the British, so in theory, because Egypt and Israel are basically kept on tight leashes and there isn't any, wars between Israel and the various Arab states, because, they've been under the British rule for God knows how long at this point.
But it's still 1960 issues though, so Egypt is not really.
India was a weird thing in the Empire.
You can have 1960s issues, but if you've got the British Empire existing through the period, just existing as this entity that doesn't have any, that is there, there is no such thing as Israel. There is no such thing as Arab Egypt. There is no such thing as...
I mean, it's really hard to not have Arab Egypt because they're still there.
I will point out, Arab Egypt was really weird in the Empire and was almost fully autonomous.
Yeah, but it's not Arab Egypt. It's the monarchy of Egypt, which is a different beast entirely from Nasser's Egypt.
Yeah, but like, I reference that just because like the native population nominally is Arab or well,
No,
Egyptian Arab.
Yeah, no, Sierra, you're right. I'm saying the government of monarchist Egypt is a different animal entirely from.
But the people themselves are called Arabs.
No, I
so-
know. I was saying, how many times do I have to?
Don't tell them that.
How many times do I have to? Do I have to?
I mean, no, Mr. Guy, that's completely fucking fair. They're part of the Arab world. They're like what happened to Arab Spring.
Anyway, as I was saying, if there's no Palestine, there's no Israel, there's no Nasserist Egypt. Are you happy now, Sierra?
Oh no! So the problem is that by 1914, Israel is still like nominally underneath the control of the Ottoman Empire. So
Yes,
the British do
Israel-
not have control.
Yeah,
I'm
British
saying
don't
that
have-
British don't have control of
Yeah,
Palestine.
that's right. Wait, hang on. So what?
Means Jordan's independent.
So what's the state of the Middle East east of Sinai?
Egypt
then?
is under British control. and
ruled by a propped up puppet king still, which means that the
I mean,
next-
Actually, no.
Which means
No.
that-
It's going to be worse. It's going to be worse because this is during the Veiled Protectorate era, where Egypt was just, you are in the Suez Canal, and your job is to protect us against the Turks, and in return, we give you money. If the Turks don't exist, you get the whole, you get the Anglo-Egyptian conferences and stuff.
Yemen's a funny meme as well. Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's more of a case of, oh god, Aden. Oh gosh.
yeah, we have to deal with that. And all
How to make Cold War Yemen worse? Add the British.
Hey, Kuwait is a thing as well that the British control, so that's gonna be fun.
Do the British own Kuwait at this point?
Yes.
They take that during World War One, don't they?
No.
Huh. I thought. Oh no, never mind.
So like a random port city that was. So I think the Ottomans do take it over afterwards, but it yeah, no. What else is a funny hot? Oh god! I just realized. Wait a minute. 1914 British Empire also means that Ireland is unified.
God damn it. I notice, as a resident Irish woman here.
1960s issues. Oh god! You think the IRA are bad?
Actually, no. This is probably the best timeline for Ireland.
Yeah, but okay.
Because if it's 1914 Ireland, then it's the autonomous Dominion of Ireland.
It's 1960s issues, though. I'm saying that like, if we just magically transported the British Empire from 1914 to 1960, meaning it's in the middle of the Troubles.
Yeah, but it's all a case of. It's probably the best timeline because you have a unified but autonomous island compared to the North being under direct control.
I
And you
suppose,
don't have-
but I don't think the IRA will take that. Will find any difference.
I mean, that's what got the original IRA to stand down. So, and by
But
the sixth,
this is
it's
yeah.
the extremist IRA. So
it's also again. I'm also just extrapolating to the 1960s. So basically, in 1955, the British Empire is the same, and then at the 1960s, oh god, everyone unified. So,
in that case, it's just a lot of confused Irish noises.
yes, but also bloody Irish noises. Because they're gonna significantly question, why the fuck? I thought we were still fighting the British in Belfast. What the hell is they doing in Dublin?
Well, it'd be more a case of if it's the 1960s, it's before the Troubles really kick off again. So
We just have it
it's in
so
one of its-
early.
Yeah, it's in one of its frozen conflict stages because it's not the 70s and the 80s,
Also,
where the Troubles is how you think of the Troubles. Because, oh god, that's a doozy. So let's talk about wars somewhere else in the world.
oh yeah, Singapore and Malaya.
Well, but did anything change for Malaya? Because this is
Yes.
This is just after the Malayan crisis, isn't it?
Yes, but did you think the Malayans would like the Singaporeans in the same country? Also, Papua New Guinea's a thing. Or well,
yes, the Great Australian Empire.
Sawed off Papua New Guinea.
Oh God, the British. The British Pacific Islands, aside from Fiji.
Cyprus crisis. Wait a minute.
Yeah. By the way, Brit, saying that home rule means no IRA is wildly optimistic.
But you see, thing is, it's more of a case of it'll turn back into a frozen conflict, because
I mean,
you have to remember the Irish Republican Army that got the full autonomy from the Empire is a very different animal to the heavy right-leaning, essentially extremist IRA you think of when you hear IRA.
I am aware of that, Foxo. However, it's important to bear in mind that both were active in 1914, and that the war gave the latter an opportunity for an action that we know as the Dublin Rising. I refuse to believe that getting home rule is just going to cause that far-leaning faction to go, yep, okay, that's fine, we've got home rule, we're all happy.
Yeah, but the home rule is what the vast majority of that version of the IRA wants. You're still going to have extremist elements, but the home rule gang and the autonomy gang are still going to get what they want.
Yeah,
and it's them getting what they wanted that cooled the original conflict until the late 60s, when you get the dickhead governor generals. That's besides the point.
I wonder what happens to Cyprus.
So if World
It's that.
So
that one meme of like Jeb.
The problem we've got so basically World War I and World War II still happens, just the British Empire's territory remains constant. So we've basically got the Empire breaking into so you've basically forced the foundation of the Imperial Federation then. That's what you've done. Because there's no way after World War II that the rest of the free world's going to go, apart from France obviously, is going to go, having an empire that you rule through force and subjugate with oppression. Yeah, that's not. That's
the Soviet stick nowadays.
Yeah, like we don't do that.
Because given how we said the Empire at the height of its power, I assume it still got the equivalent power to had back then. So.
Yeah, like, if we're assuming equivalent levels of power and GDP, we're assuming a third superpower on the global stage, independent of the Russians and the Americans, although leaning heavily towards the American camp, aligned against the Russians. Though with very much its own sphere of influence and interests on the global stage.
Now the big one.
You see, thing is,
America is still, in terms of tiers of power, America is probably still leading, Russia is probably still second, but Britain is probably a close third behind the Russians. The reason I say Britain's third is that it's basically fighting a constant war against independence movements, and it has to fund a large military, which is gimping its economy. Admittedly, it's doing this slightly better than the Russians, but unlike the Russians, the Russians don't have to constantly spend money to fight 5 different independence wars at the same fucking time, continuously for 40 years.
Or the wild card. India turns into a bigger hotspot now because the Chinese start invading over the Himalayas.
Which would be funny, and like the Empire,
probably gonna happen because
I mean, the funny thing is, Sierra, if that does, then we might see a war in the late 50s between the British Empire and the non-nuclear People's Republic of China.
The 5th Opium War.
You know what? Honestly, that's probably what the Chinese would call it. Or alternatively, if the Chinese are causing shit over the Himalayas and the Korean War breaks out, the British may go, you know what? Fuck it, we ball.
Yeah, so the British Empire would be the second strongest economically, just because they've all controlled the fucking Suez, the Gulf of Aden, and then also the Straits of Malacca, which they basically controlled the Indian.
And Hormuz.
Well, that's not a bigger shipping priority than fucking a line from basically London to Hong Kong.
Yeah, but it's still the Gulf oil states that they're going to just become more and more valuable.
Well, yes, I'm sorry, Gulf oil states. No, I think you mean British petroleum extraction zones. and Iran.
I mean, also,
No,
well,
the Trucial states would stay the Trucial states because the Trucial states were
most of the-
complicated.
most of the countries that Britain would have at this time aren't exactly big oil producers, because Arabia, Iraq, and Iran are not all in British control.
Iran's in the British. If we're talking British Imperial, if we're talking British Empire, Iran is basically a quasi-protectorate, and so is Iraq.
But we're talking about the 1960s, so I will also extrapolate that nothing is like the relations that has happened.
No, sorry. 1914, so not Iraq, but Iran will still be in the British orbit, with the British Oil Company extracting most of Iran's oil. If we're talking,
You still have, but there's a difference between being a full protectorate and being heavily influenced.
That is true.
Otherwise, but most of Europe would be an American protectorate.
Fair enough. I mean, okay, so if we're even so, there's no reason why the British won't make the same oil discoveries the Arabs did in the Trucial states during the Cold War. Arabia will obviously still be even more in the pocket of
Unstable, actually. Wait a minute.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be unstable because the Arabs are revolting.
I'm talking about Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Arabia will be very much aligned with and dependent on America for protection.
The Arabs will revolt. Actually, that might be the
Wolves
best
are
timeline.
attacking.
That might be the best timeline for Saudi Arabia then, if the Arab revolt actually does take root there.
I mean, you also have like
Libya,
Libya,
the Saudis are out of fucking power.
Libya, Egypt, like Israel, Palestine, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq and Iran is going to be freaking really hot spots if British even controls like a little bit of slivers of everything.
Like I'm also not going to lie that I am fairly certain that the US and the British will basically have the US will have a vested interest in keeping the Saudis on the throne of Saudi Arabia, as that's their partners in the oil.
And then the Shah.
Yeah, and the British will have an interest in the Shah, and neither side will want any form of rebellion or upending of the states in the Middle East, because that will probably lead to them falling into Soviet orbit. So you probably see some sort of British Anglo-American understanding on the Middle East.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the Americans would want the fucking CIA operation to Egypt, because this is also the 1960s, and this is
Because
the home of the CIA.
Yeah, you have to remember that the US in the 50s and 60s is very anti-colonial.
Well, this is true, but
Very.
the difference is,
Because
though,
I don't see the US and UK getting along.
No, they're not getting along. You didn't hear what I said. I said an understanding over the Middle East, because it benefits neither side to have their.
I mean, I'm pretty sure
Iran and Saudi Arabia go up in smoke.
I'm pretty sure the CIA.
America wants Arab democracies to keep British aligned colonies and kingdoms. They're not going. Sure, they might have face.
It's
but
the
they're going to
CIA moving
juggle each other.
from Indochina to Egypt and then Singapore and Indonesia. Which, sorry, Indonesia even more now.
Because the CIA is going to try and undermine the way they would.
Oh no, I don't doubt they're going to try to, Fox. But I also would say that you've got this, like, it's not the same as it was in, but no, the thing is, the US won't turn a blind eye to French colonialism in this timeline. Basically, Britain and France will be very much, France will be clinging to Britain's arm, demanding they help in Indochina.
So, historical France.
Basically, yeah. France will be like, but the thing is, because the British Empire is just extant, the French will basically see it as a matter of pride that no French territory. You'll probably see some form of, like, you'll have NATO, which will be America.
I don't see NATO. I don't see NATO.
No, actually, no, you're right, because okay, so here's how I see it. You'll have the Washington Pact, which will probably be West Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Norway, Denmark, Luxembourg, and Italy. You'll probably have the Entente Cordiale, which is a revival of the old pact from the First World War, even if only in name, which will be France, Britain, possibly Spain, definitely Portugal, because Portugal also wants to hold on to its colonial empire.
Actually, here's a fucking really good. good question
I don't.
afterwards.
I don't know if the Netherlands will fall into NATO or will fall into the Entente, because it basically depends if who promises them the most of the Dutch East Indies that will be returned to them.
What happened to the Five Eyes? Because then basically, fuck, the British don't have fucking actual any intelligence services anymore.
What do you mean?
Yeah, having Five Eyes, especially having Australia. I mean, the basic thing would be cutting off CIA and what is it? Not NSA now, but like, what is the equivalent now? No, it's just entirely this. The CIA no longer support the UK in terms of Five Eyes.
Okay, but we can also assume some form of equivalent intelligence branch and intelligence capability will have been developed by a British Empire that's lasted all the way through from fucking 1914 to
I don't know, because
Sort of. It's hard to gauge just because like
I don't see any,
You can
I
honestly-
can't make any reasonable argument for why they wouldn't, because like
I can.
what- I can't. Like it would just be incredibly
Because
stupid.
any intelligence service the British Empire had is going to be a lot more alongside, instead of the more covert ops style that the CIA took. It's
Fox, I'm sorry, but if this British Empire has gone through the First World War, the interwar period, and the Second World War, they'll be just as.
it also basically undermines
it's
it
also-
because
Yeah.
Five Eyes strength just happens a lot just because in the US is very aware of what happens is because Five Eyes also relies on the Canada, Australia, and New Zealand being independent.
Yeah.
And if that's not going to be the case with Five Eyes, then it's basically just either it's not a peer. Five Eyes isn't a peer thing. It's not a two peers working with each other. It's the U.S. and then other intelligence agencies reporting to each other.
So basically, what we've got, Sierra, is we've got weaker intelligence agencies in both Britain and the US, but not too much.
I mean, implying, of course, the British did much outside of Europe, especially in terms of Five Eyes itself. But yes,
I mean, I don't see any reason why, as the Cold War goes on, the Soviets rise to become a truly globally influencing power. The British,
because they're supplying terrorists everywhere.
yeah,
and it's also sort of until the 80s, until the effects of economic stagnation become truly apparent, the Soviets are still a big fucking strong empire.
I mean, so it also doesn't analyze properly what the Soviets are doing in the 1960s and 1970s because they're not the Soviets as a power are not like economic controlling of different peoples. I mean, it does have economic controls, and economics is a huge factor of Soviet oligarchical society, but their main power influence is the supplying of terrorist organizations in places like India, not Vietnam, because Vietnam's just an independence movement, but like in South America too, is one of their biggest places in terms of especially using proxies to supply the Cubans, for example. The Cubans into Africa, and the Cubans.
Era. This is Khrushchev's era, which means the main source of Soviet power is going to be tanks.
Well,
Because-
a global influence, especially for places like South America and Africa especially, is not going to be the rapid amount of group of Soviet forces in Germany. That's for the Europeans to decide. It's the fact that they could absolutely have proxies to supply themselves, like the Cubans, for example, or the massive amount of communist places in Africa.
I just realised something incredibly funny. There is one blessed piece of this timeline. Apartheid Africa isn't a thing. That's hilarious.
Apartheid Africa is definitely probably going to be a thing.
No, it's not. That's the point.
Right, okay.
If South Africa's still a British Dominion, then the apartheid side of the African Bund is kept firmly in check by the British Governor General, because the British had absolutely no patience for
Oh,
that. Yeah, no, Fox, I'm sorry.
Right, okay.
Fox,
It's
there
more
was-
complicated than that,
Fox,
because
so there was no
Yeah,
apartheid
right.
in Africa before until the British left. That's entirely the Boers.
partial apartheid. Because the Boers will be Boers.
Well, if push comes to shove, and they, as the Empire liberalises as we go into the 60s, and the Boers rebel, well, then we'll just have the Fourth Boer War and put them down even harder.
But it's... because, yes, I can see places like Rhodesia not becoming apartheid states if they can keep clamping down
So can Africa.
on some of the more... Yeah, like, Rhodesia's Africa. A
South
significant
Africa's
chunk of
like-
British Africa. But it's rather a case of South Africa is in a weird position of being too much of a white... It acts like the white dominions do when it wants autonomy, but it has the colonial policy of the African colonies, which you're not fixing in the 60s.
Yes, but
The empire, but the world, and especially the Western world, is still very fucking racist.
I'm aware of that, and colonial policy isn't the rosiest thing in the world, but it's... British colonial policy isn't apartheid.
It's just an equivalent of racism.
Yeah, like it's shit, I'm not gonna lie, but it's not... Blacks can't go here, it's just that we're not particularly sure that you're just as equivalent as we are.
I mean, apartheid as an actual term just means a state of like separate peoples.
I am aware
So
of what apartheid is, thank you.
Yeah, get two separate law codes for two different peoples.
Whereas the British Empire just isn't that. That's not.
I mean,
British-
by definition, it is.
That's not.
Because you have the laws, you have different sets of laws for different groups of people.
That's not. Yes, but no. Like, it's a vast oversimplification.
It's like pretty much on a fundamental level, the white Europeans had a greater degree of right than the black Africans. That's just colonialism,
Well, yes, but that's not apartheid.
and that
the actual term apartheid is also basically made up.
Yes.
yeah, it's
I
like
know.
we speak on such technicalities there. On a functional level, it doesn't matter.
It kind of does a little bit.
The empire, the colonies are still going to be incredibly discriminatory
Yes.
towards black Africans,
Yes, this is true.
unless you're in Tanzania. But
Also, yeah, Commonwealth Space Agency. British man in space by 1960. Fuck yes, we ball.
actually, the most interesting thing is you probably see United East Africa.
Probably, yeah. Like you'll probably see dominions appear. Like yeah. As we move forward, the British will basically start creating dominions out of Africa,
It would have to decolonize.
but not decolonize because we're trying to this is the whole point of, like this imperial states that exists. Like they want to keep a hold on things, but they also want to be seen to be decolonizing. So you'll just see dominions pop into existence.
Because it's the whole Dominion doctrine was one of decolonization as early as 1901, when it's first off proposed for everywhere that's not the white colonies. Because even by the height of the British Empire, they know it's not sustainable, and it will go towards independence. It's just a case of how does it go towards independence?
They were probably, you know, like I say, the Federation was the only real way to keep the Empire together.
It wasn't though.
It kind of was.
The Empire was too big to overextended.
The Federation would have probably kept at least the Dominions in. Like the African states may have gone, but the Dominions would have been kept. If the Dominion was created in the 1890s, it has to be.
I
created
don't
in
think the
1890s.
Canadians in the 1960s want to be still part of the British Empire.
No, you're right. I'm talking about, you know, like I say, the Federation and the doctrine of the Federation and the idea that we're all federal citizens has to be created and founded in the 1890s to basically guarantee that a federal state consisting of the United Kingdom, Canada, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand persists into the 20th and 21st century. If you're lucky, you might even get India and Africa in and have a by the 21st century, have like basically a federation of nations, possibly a renaming from the Imperial Federation, that's basically just
Just
acknowledging...
a Commonwealth.
No, a
You'd
federation.
have the Commonwealth.
No, not a Commonwealth, a federation, because that way it's detaching it partially from the royal family and basically modernizing it as we go forwards. And you're basically ending up with this nation that's not an empire anymore. It was an empire, but it's transitioned over the course of a full century to being this weird multi-ethnic, multinational... No, sorry, not multinational, multi-ethnic federation.
Yes, because there's a reason why of all the proposals, the Commonwealth proposal, even as far back as the original Imperial Conference was accepted.
Because the Commonwealth was the one that required the least change.
No, it was one that required the most change.
No, that's
Because
the
the Commonwealth
Federation.
proposals was the start and slow effect of decolonization.
No, the Federation would have required the most change, not the Commonwealth.
It's not. But the whole point is, the Commonwealth is the one that got picked because it's the most practical. Because the Empire's too big to survive in any situation. Like, the White Dominions are gonna go for independence. They've got their own national identity by this point. They're gonna go for it. Federation or no federation. Just depends on how bloody it's gonna be.
No, if Federation goes in the 1890s, you're going to be a united federal polity by the 21st century. You're just wrong.
Yeah, but federal policy and people's identities are two different things. And even by the 1890s, there's the Canadian identity, there's the Australian identity.
I'm aware, but if you have a federation where you have multiple identities that are, respected and not one lording over the other like the British Empire, which is the whole fucking point, which you seem to be missing no matter how many times I fucking say it. Gonna go.
I get it, it's just it wouldn't be enough.
I disagree.
Anyway, do you want another question? Because I'm going to have to go in like 5 minutes.
I think we'll have a last 15 minutes of rapid fire questions, then I'm wrapping it up for the evening.
This rate fleet's going to have a panic. Why?
Does anyone have any more questions? Just give me...
Yeah. You have to elaborate on that one, Dragon. Oh! Okay, yes. Thank you.
Foxy, you need to invite me to this server of yours.
Maybe. It's just a lot. It's essentially... it's a D&D server. And I have to ask the other people on it because there's a lot of people who aren't particularly happy with new people.
Oh. I'm not surprised at the last part. That doesn't surprise me.
Yes. It says the best way to describe it is a refuge server for a bunch of people. Oh fuck.
Yeah, I get that. But yeah, I don't think there's much of any more questions, unless anyone's got one last question for me to answer.
Come on, Dragon, I know you've got a question.
Kaboom.
Kaboom.
Okay.
I have one.
If I don't have a question,
I have
by
one.
8:15, I'm ending it at 8:15.
I have one.
Oh, you do you?
Alright, don't worry, Dragon, just ask questions, we don't mind. Otherwise I'll go back to arguing with Fleet, because that's my favourite pastime on this server.
What's this wee shit, Kimasawa? This is my show.
Oh, don't you know, comrade? It is our show now.
Interdictor, easily. Also, I have a Vorian now, by the way. I bought it.
Hey!
And
Oh,
you
here
guys
she
will-
goes.
You guys will have to teach me how to fucking do shit. I want to build steampunk ships. One last question from Yenna. Make it a good one, Yenna. Like it's all riding on you now, Chief. You got a chance to ask one question that I'll answer. You gotta make it a good one. This is the last question of this rambling, so you gotta make it good. What's my favourite paper ship from World of Warships? I know this is going to be a boring answer, but I don't have one because I hate every single fucking one of them because they've all been pulled out of Wargaming's fucking arse with no basis in reality. And I hate every single one of them.
No, most of them are sort of semi-based. It's just a lot of the German ones are pulled out the ass. And the Soviet ones. And the Italian ones.
And the ones from the Netherlands. And the ones from Sweden. Like, Guy.
Yeah, Florida's list.
Yeah, like, Guy. Half of, Guy, isn't it like 6 out of the 10 Dutch cruisers are fake? Without any design drawings at all?
Let me grab the mouse before they can check the chip server again.
Oh, no, you've awakened the dragon.
That one's factually false, Fleet. You are correct, there is a lot of false paper ships, but recently, well, I say recently, as of the past year, there was a thing done to check. Overall, of complete wargaming fabrications, there's roughly only 20.
That's 22 many.
Most of the rest... No, I can understand and agree with that to a point.
And also, more to the point, the things that aren't outright fabrications are still half fabrications.
No,
which
they're not.
Still makes me go fuck.
A
So
lot
that's how we
of the German cruisers. A
So,
lot of the
If we
German
take-
cruisers.
If we take roughly 20% of them are just fake Wargaming Blaster designs,
Still
it's
20%
something
too
like
many.
only. But it's still only 30% are heavily modified beyond what they should be. There's roughly 50% that are pretty close, not necessarily 100%, but very close to being very historical. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 20 completely fake designs is very stupid.
But they are.
Fake,
But
probably.
the 20 fake designs fill in some very cool niches, though.
Yeah,
I am
Fleet
not-
really
I-
doesn't
that's
like
not
what
the case
Wargames
at
does.
all, Bull Reeves.
Mm.
That's not the case at all.
In Water Warships, it's a very arcadey game, and you kind of have to detach yourself from actual naval history to play it.
I understand Fleet's
I
perspective.
used to
be
enjoy it, but I just stopped being able to. Like
fair. Don't take it seriously.
3 years
It's
ago.
the best solution,
I
but fair.
tried, and I just
Oh, yeah. It's because I had to take about a 5-year break from it to come back and actually start liking it again. So,
It was very profitable.
oh yes, because I spent nearly 300 quid on it, and you use my invite and use your invite code.
I'm stealing that Sea Dollars because I need to borrow. Wait a minute, Sea Dollars, is that design? Is that a ship bucket version of the ship you made? Because if it is, I'm stealing that.
But Dragon can probably guess my favorite ship in World of Warships.
Orc or is it Rook? Sorry.
Rook. funny triple 15-inch go bang.
You just like the hood development line.
Yes! And they should have added them instead of G3, because G3 doesn't fucking fit the line.
G3 is fucking fantastic. Shut the fuck up.
No,
right,
she's
no.
not!
Shut up.
So I'm going to cut any of this off from before either of you start. Personally, I like G3, and I do think she deserves a place in warships. But Foxo's argument is that she shouldn't have been on a G3 should not have been on the hood development line.
I
She
disagree.
should have been in her own development
What?
line.
No, that's bollocks.
Why? Well, like, the idea is that basically you could have went Rook, and then there's 2 or 3 other designs that lead basically down a development of a potential hood style battlecruiser. Then we
Because-
get a G3 as a separate line.
Because at tier 10, you could have had K2, which is hood with 18-inch guns.
But that's not something that. No, Foxo,
and
no,
Brit-
go to the corner.
Counterpoint, Britain also weren't really considering, I think it's a Wargaming call it I3, which is just G3 but N3 guns. Scale up G3 so that it can mount 18-inch guns.
It was designed, then dismissed
Right,
because...
okay, I'm gonna have to stop it because I
Yeah.
need to not.
You said
I
quarter
need to
past and
not.
now 20 past.
Yeah, I need to not. I only have
Yeah,
room
see,
for
yeah.
so much.
No,
madness.
Sea Dodders is actually relatively correct here.
I've
Like,
done.
You could have had.
I've done relatively well right now, but my mind is starting to fracture, and God knows what the people on YouTube are thinking of all this shit. They have no idea what's going on. Also, Hendrik the Heterosexual.
Yes,
tried to-
Boris got
tried
it
to-
right.
Also, Hendrik the Heterosexual tried to leave me a super chat on YouTube, but obviously monetization's not enabled, so he couldn't. Which I find absolutely adorable, and I'm just like, people want to give me money. The fuck am I doing?
I'm not sure I necessarily agree that G3 is an Iowa, though, of the 20s.
No, it's not.
G3 definitely does belong in Tech Tree, no one's debating that. It's just different
Yeah.
position.
Right,
Honestly,
okay, I'm
if
gonna-
any ships
Anyway,
that
before we
Iowa of the
continue this,
20s...
let
Stop.
Fleet finish it.
Right, so
Yes.
thank you very much all for watching.
yeah, if any ships that Iowa of the 20s, it's Hawk. Because...
Foxo, zip. Thank you very
Hmm?
much for. As I was saying, thank you very much for watching and attending Ramblings. I hope you've all had a good time. Those on YouTube, I hope you've all had a good time. Take care, folks, and I will catch you all next time.